up so we can see it. All right, good evening, everyone. I want to thank everyone for your patience this evening. We are in a non-traditional place where we typically meet, but if you are not aware, the board room ceiling collapsed, and so we figured you guys maybe wanted to be in a more comfortable space than looking up at, well, there's pipes, but not as friendly looking pipes. So I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order and ask that the clerk please call the roll.
Dr. Cabinet, Mr. Krim, Mr. Lopez, Mrs. Moore, Dr. Nevares-Martinez, Mr. Nobeski, Dr. Rodriguez, present. Ms. Williams, present. Mrs. Willis,
Present.
quorum is present.
Thank you, and I do know that Mr. Nowitzki is en route. He should be here very shortly, and Dr. Kavanaugh, Dr. Nevares-Martinez, and Ms. Moore did tell me in advance that they had a conflict and would not be here this evening. But before we get started with our other additions to the agenda, I am going to ask everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I had planned on having Mr. Nowitzki read the mission statement this evening, but since he's not here yet, I'm going to ask Ms. Williams to do it for us.
The Lansing School District's mission statement is to provide a high-quality education in a culturally safe and nurturing environment that supports all students to live purposefully and fulfilling lives.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is any additions to the agenda. To my colleagues, do we have any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, we do have a time on this evening's calendar for public comment on agenda item. I do not have any registered speakers on agenda items this evening, but I do want to note for speakers or any individuals in the audience who wish to address the board later in the evening on non-agenda items, it's important that you complete one of these blue cards that are in the back of the room and give them to our board secretary over here on the side so that you can be recognized during that portion of the agenda. That brings us on to our next item this evening, which is presentations and a report from the superintendent. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Schuldiner.
All right, thank you. Whoa. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really lovely to see all of you. As Rachel said, we are in a very different kind of building because our roof has collapsed. Although I will say being in a school is actually really quite nice. Last year, if you folks remember, we actually kind of toured the district, and if this goes well, I think we might continue to do it because, to be honest, I have no idea when the roof is going to be, or the ceiling is going to be set up. It's certainly been a while, the way that the calendar broke down. You know, we had July 4th and we had the ISSs, which we don't have. So it's been a long time since we've met. So there's been some really kind of great stuff that's been going on. Of course, the graduation, for those of you who saw for the first time in a while, we had the graduation at Breslin, which I think went over really, really well. There's something pretty special about that. So it's certainly our hope that we'll continue to do that work. But at Breslin, which was really powerful, of course, was the graduation. And, you know, the numbers that are verified are typically done in February, but the initial numbers that I can kind of share with the district is that it looks like we're really close to the 85% graduation rate that we've been really looking for. And our goal was to do it in the 2025-2026 year. So the fact that we might have done it 2 years earlier is really quite amazing. And I want to give a big shout out to all of the high school folks and of course the K-8 folks. But the work that the high schools have done over these last 3 years has been really tremendous. Again, just to be clear, the initial numbers are what we're talking about. They don't become official until February once the state certifies them and does their accountability metric. The other big goal that the district has been around attendance. Sadly, for years the attendance has been pretty low. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, our attendance was at 70%. And again, to give a really nice report is that our end of year initial numbers are actually all the way up to 84%. So just to put that in perspective, in the last 3 years, we've been able to raise the graduation rate by 23%. And in the last 2 years, we've been able to raise the attendance rate by 14%, coming within less than a point of pre-COVID attendance, which is pretty rare for school districts. So, I wanted to keep the kind of update brief. We haven't spoken for a while, but it's really kind of amazing to see what's been happening throughout the district over these last couple of years. But as I think everybody can see, we actually are visited by lots of people today, which is terrific. I am used to sitting on the other side where I was on a school board myself, and typically our rooms would be filled with hundreds, if not thousands of people. In the 3 years I've been the superintendent, our rooms are usually pretty empty. And so it actually is really quite wonderful to see so many people here today. I can only imagine that a lot of people want to hear about and want to speak about the libraries. There has been quite a bit in the press discussing the district's possible decisions around libraries, but I will say, if you've noticed or paid attention to any of the news or any of the articles, the district hasn't said anything. There's a reason for that, is that none of the stuff that you've been reading is probably true. And so we want to be really clear, certainly as me as a superintendent, is there's a reason why school districts don't respond to the press, and there's a reason why school districts don't engage in kind of back and forth things with folks, because we have to A, protect our employees, and B, we also have to make sure that if we're going to make a decision, we have to really decide on it in a kind of systematic way. But because so many people seem to care about this and so many people have really reached out to us, what I'm going to ask the board president, if she will allow me to, is to kind of show you how the decisions get made here. This is my time as superintendent on the agenda, right? It says report from superintendent. So usually what I would do here is say, well, I'm the superintendent, this is what's happening, graduation rates, attendance rates, et cetera, et cetera. But what we can do, and what I think might be really kind of powerful and might be really interesting, is to show the community kind of how decisions are made within the district, and to be really clear about what I'm going to ask, if it's okay that we do, is to actually have the people who have been advocating for the change about libraries to present to me as superintendent what they want to advocate for. This is a lot different than what you think, or what people might think how this works. As a superintendent, I'm always asking our amazing staff, what do they think we should do to make the district better? And over the course of 3 years, we've done a lot of things. Universal pre-K, Lansing Tech, new programs left and right. All of those things come from conversations where staff will come to my office, or I'll go to their office, and really sit with them and say, okay, what are you advocating for? What do you want? And so what I'd like to do is to invite some of the members of the departments to come to the table and really kind of explain to me what it is that you are advocating for. And I want to be really clear here The district, again, and this is what to see, district hasn't made any formal decisions one way or another about anything. We don't really do that in the middle of the summer per se. We're trying to plan, we're trying to do stuff, but we know that there's this information out there that people are perceiving about what the district is going to do or wants to do or has already done. So, what, if possible, I mean, Christina and Sergio and Sarah and Clayton and Sarah, why don't you guys come up to the front here and take your, I guess, chairs with you if we don't fit. And so again, to preface this, yeah, it's okay, whatever works, is that what's about to happen is that the representatives of the Office of Schools, which of course is our pedagogical side, then we have the Office of Special Populations, we have Human Resources. We're lucky enough to be joined by one of our terrific principals. Hey Nicole, nice to see you. And then Sarah O'Neill is part of our Office of Schools as well, and then Christina is the COO, so she's representing kind of facilities and operations. So again, we rarely kind of respond to stuff in the press, and we really try to kind of keep things, you know, closed to as we decide things. I don't think anybody really wants to see how the sausage is made, but because there's been so much, I think, misinformation and so much concern about what the district might be doing, it might be kind of interesting, or I think very, very helpful in elucidating opportunity, is rather than me give a kind of report per se, is to actually have the people that are leading this charge to report to me and have you kind of see this. What you'll also see during this is I'm going to probably ask them questions. I'm going to probably push back on them. I'm going to see what's going on. The request here from the board, of course, is this is during the report from the superintendent. Of course, the board can ask whatever they want at any time, but I think it'd be really helpful to kind of hear from the employees of the district who represent the Office of Schools, the Office of Special Populations, HR, facilities, et cetera, to kind of see where any of this stuff is coming from, because as superintendent, I don't make decisions in a vacuum, and I rarely make decisions that aren't going through or vetted by the staff. So I'll have probably some comments around this later, but I have to say that I have been really impressed by how our staff has taken this and how much they wanted to be able to kind of share their thoughts around their ideas that might or might not be kind of decided by the school district. So, I don't know if people can see the screens. Oh, awesome. So people in the audience, you can see that one, and I guess the board can see this one. Terrific. So, I'm going to turn it over to, I guess, Dr. O'Neill. Awesome. All right. Take it away, Dr. O'Neill.
Good evening, Mr. Schuldner. Thank you for allowing me to share what I think we should do moving forward with our libraries. As Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, I also have the pleasure of leading the library department over the last few years. I'm an absolute lover of libraries. I have grown up in this community, and libraries are deeply important to me. I am passionate about books, period. I have served as a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher in the back of the yards neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, where we didn't have access to a library at the middle level. I would take the bus downtown Chicago and fill as many of the tote bags as I could to make sure that my students had access to high-quality literature. I have also served as a Title I reading specialist, where I took pride in engaging students in literacy learning by being clear about the why of reading matters and how it can be life-changing for a child. I was lucky enough to serve as principal of Rio School, where student voice led me to prioritize the updating of our library to be bursting with books, full of representation and diversity of thought reflected in the content. I smile when I think of it now, because I was not yet a student of library. I had no idea the amount of additional work I created for those librarians. No matter, the community pulled together with librarians, and they made sure every book was stamped, labeled, shelving was moved, and students had what they needed. I would argue at that point that we had the coolest books in the district, extending us across a continuum of reading levels. I also led in partnership with WestEd a team through our 2021 Systemic Equity Review. We consisted of a team of 40 stakeholders representative of student, staff, parent, and community voice. The review made 4 specific recommendations to begin infusing equity into our libraries, with a librarian serving on the team. Recommendations included rewriting our fine policy, which the board took immediate action in abolishing all fines to increase access to books, to conduct a yearly review of library materials to ensure materials accurately reflect the diversity in our community, to allocate necessary resources to add or replace our library collections, and to review funding policies to ensure equity. All 4 recommendations have been addressed and are continually monitored with interim targets. I say all this to say that historically we have invested deeply in our libraries and yet continue to see our literacy scores decline. We finally have the time and the resources to review this question. What tools and resources are essential for our students? How can we modernize to continue supporting libraries while increasing scores to ensure that our students become global and critical thinkers? Next, to show you the current state of our libraries, I will pass off the next slide to Christina Tokar, our COO.
Thank you, Dr. O'Neill. I would like to share that all of our schools have a library. Yes, every school has an open and active library in our district. I know there have been things published in the media stating that we are closing school libraries, and this is simply not true. And if any school would like to close down spaces within their school or add new spaces, this is something that is brought to my attention for discussion and decision among the leadership of our district. I would like to share with you the current state of all of our libraries. Our first slide is Averill Elementary, and before I continue with more, what you're going to see in some of these pictures are spaces with items moved to the side or potentially boxed up. That's because we care deeply about our libraries and we spend the summer cleaning them thoroughly, and that is currently the process that is going on. Additional boxes that you might see in several of these libraries are the thousands of new books that are being delivered to each and every one of them. The next picture shows Kavanaugh Elementary, and you can see a wide array of different books.
And I mean,
Sure.
just again, for everybody who's watching this at home or in the, if this was really a meeting like this, which it kind of is because they're sharing this with me, I would say, are you lying to me? When did you take these pictures, right? And so when did you take these pictures?
These pictures were taken 2 and 3 days ago
Okay.
by our communications department.
Fair
So
enough.
this is very current.
Okay.
Next is Forest View. Geyer Park. Lyons Elementary, with a bunch of lovely art as well included. Willow at Riddle. We're doing some extensive cleaning there so you can see how some of that's a little bit messy. Atwood. Dwight Rich. This school this week and next week is being deeply cleaned. So this is one of the schools I was talking about that has everything pushed to the side. The boxes you see on the side are brand new books that have been delivered to the library. And I believe, Ms. O'Neill, we're having thousands of new books delivered to Dwight Rich alone.
So these are new books that are coming to the school right now?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Gardner, representing all of our lovely communities. Luton Elementary, and this one I want to be specific to mention that I know there's been some things circulating in the community, that Luton's library was boxed up, that we were removing all of the resources. This picture was literally taken 2 days ago. As you can see, none of that is true.
And there's no plan to,
There is no plan to remove
Okay.
resources or box up the library, no.
fair enough.
Mount Hope at the current Wood Creek location. Just want to make sure I point that one out because, as you know, we're building the new Mount Hope, and I will get to that later. North Elementary. Pattongill. So this is one that's a little bit of an exception. We're not removing any of the resources, but as you know, we're adding a new 14 classroom pod to the school. And so what we're needing to do is use this space as flexible classroom space until that pod is finished being built. So we're gonna take these boxes, we're gonna move them into mobile library carts and move it into a different space within the school.
And this is done until we build the 14 classroom extension?
Correct, and then we will reopen this
Okay.
traditional library space and put all the books
And when do we think the extension's going to be done?
It's gonna be somewhere around like fall, late fall.
Okay, and then it will go back
And
into
then
the
it will go
library?
back into the library.
Okay.
This is Post Oak. Sheridan Road. And here you're gonna see we have multiple digital resources as well with the different carts. Wexford. And now I'm gonna move on to our high school libraries, and what you're gonna see is we've really spent a lot of money investing in our high school libraries with a lot of our new builds, so these spaces have started to turn into more of the modern library spaces, where we've got different seating arrangements and those types of things. Everett is a school that we invested in heavily last year in their library last summer. So you'll see the different new soft seating arrangements, more collaborative learning spaces to get into that more modern library experience. And then this is Sexton.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. With that, yep. I'd just like to turn it back over to Dr. O'Neill so she can talk about our future vision of literacy and what that looks like in the district.
I have a question if possible, Ms. Tokar. Can you go back to the Willow at Riddle picture for me? Is that a temporary classroom or is that the actual size of the library?
You're only seeing part of the library. So a lot of these pictures, even in fewer pictures, like this is not the entire size of the library. The libraries are large. They're the size of a classroom or larger. In most locations, larger.
Okay, thank you.
And this is the original library that Riddle had?
Correct.
Right.
Well, this was actually moved into one of the larger kindergarten rooms. So when we built on the new extension at Riddle, we added 2 large kindergarten rooms. This was back in the previous bond.
Okay.
And so then with the reconfiguration, this space is actually one of the larger spaces, larger than a traditional classroom.
Oh, good.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk a little bit about the vision of literacy that we have. Our vision in the instructional division and across departments is that our Lansing School District will provide academically rigorous and culturally relevant literacy instruction that prepares all students to be analytical readers, skillful writers, and effective communicators for success in college, career, and life. In order to achieve this, students need to have access to up-to-date resources, diverse and inclusive texts, materials at their reading level, a print-rich environment, opportunities to dialogue and write about the text with each other, and access to lots and lots of books. We need to ensure that the library is not the only place where books are found. We've invested heavily in our school libraries, and we are branching out to also provide books for daily use in a child's classroom, and I'll talk about that more later. We are also ensuring that students have access to these spaces year-round. So as an instructional division, Mr. Schuldner, we believe in 21st century literacy, inclusive of digital literacy. If students are going to grow in literacy, they have to be surrounded by a balance of high-quality literature and nonfiction at all times throughout the day. I, along with the Deputy Superintendent of Schools, our 3 directors of instruction, and principals all believe that children need to see books surrounding them as part of the fabric of everyday educational space that they occupy. Mr. Schuldner, it was shocking to read in the paper about disinvestment. We have spent more money and have more books than we have had in decades. Our current collections are stunning, and we ensure that they are by using the library software Tidal Wave, which provides a diversity, equity, and inclusion report to make sure our collections are diverse. We can pull a report for you right now for any school and show you a breakdown of percentage representative of every subgroup of students that we serve, and we make sure this happens.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I've been around long enough. I'm not shocked with anything that's put in the press, but, you know, I'm glad that you're saying that. I certainly know that we've been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on library equipment and library books, and, you know, I know you've worked really hard, so I don't want you to feel bad about what might or might not be portrayed in the press. This is why you get to always meet with me, so I don't want you to feel too bad about that. But what I'm hearing here is that there's now a kind of a move towards not just the libraries in the schools as kind of singular places, but really trying to make sure that the whole building is print-rich, and you've invested in quite a lot of that work as well.
Correct,
Okay,
on multiple fronts.
great, thanks.
Mr. Superintendent,
Yeah.
3 decades in administration and 3 children of my own attended our schools. Today, we have books more representative of our community, and also we have bilingual books for a large population of multilingual learners, which is about 17% of the student body. Never do I remember one of my childs bringing a Spanish book when they were in school. In addition, we have 34 preschool classrooms, which is one of the largest programs in the state. Each classroom has a library with selections that represent the population being served. These 4-year-olds have access to text and visuals at a very young age, which is an early literacy foundational strategy. In addition, the program shares bilingual books with students to take home, so parents who are not English proficient can also support their own children with literacy skills.
I mean, sorry, I mean, and again, this is not, you know, this is how this would normally go, and I'm hearing something that Sergio's saying that I didn't know, and I would actually ask him. So we have a program that sends bilingual books to homes, to families? That's awesome. What is it?
We have a program in the preschools where the kids, when we identify what language they speak at home, they have a little bag with a bilingual book,
Oh,
both
that's
in
nice.
English and that language, and they take it for a week.
That's great to know. So anybody in the audience, if you know about that, we'll get you books. That's really actually quite terrific. Thank you, Sergio.
You're welcome. Dr. O'Neill, do you want to explain further?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that in addition to the purchase of new books, that last summer we spent more than 300 hours as a larger team, a team that consisted of librarians and general education teachers that are supportive, that we appreciate so much, weeding our collections for racist and or classist or inaccurate materials still in our collections. Weeding is simply the process of going book by book by book in a collection and using a criteria to determine if a book should remain in the collection. School by school, we moved as a team, weeding our collections meticulously so that all criteria can be met in the selection of new reading materials to support diversity, using student voice as the driver.
And Sarah, that was a lot of the work that was kind of started with the equity team?
Yes.
Because I know that was one of the things. Okay. Did you have equity team members do that, or was you
No,
and
this
educators?
was a collaboration of librarians, and librarians reached out in the general ed community to see
Okay.
who could support.
That's great.
All of the decisions we're trying to make is based on our vision as a district. So we are asking the district to think differently based on this vision.
With that being said, Ben, because you know that's what I call you, I want to have a discussion about what modern libraries are, and I'm sure you might know what those are, but I want to kind of go around what the definition is that's circulating in the education community. In the landscape of modern education, school libraries are undergoing a revolutionary transformation. Evolving from their traditional roles as book-centric storehouses, they are now vibrant, multifunctional hubs that nurture collaboration, creativity, and digital fluency. This shift mirrors the broader move toward a student-centered learning model, wherein engagement and learning outcomes are significantly enhanced through interactive, technologically enriched environments.
Great.
These are 4 examples of new modern libraries, and this is what we are looking forward to enacting within our schools. Oh, sorry.
Are those on the lower right, are those movable?
They're on casters. So
Oh.
that's something that's really, really unique, and something
Okay.
we're actually looking at exploring for Mount Hope and Willow as well. So with the casters, you can create different learning spaces, different collaborative spaces. Those different types of storage units can make all of those different spaces depending on what you need to use the system for.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. So I just want to reiterate that we care deeply about our libraries, and we want you to understand that there is a different way of thinking about them. The new and best models around the country focus on digital fluency, media centers, 21st century digital learning, are comfortable and warm spaces for everyone. Our libraries must change from cloistered, quiet, to a modern, warm, collaborative learning environment.
I will now share, Mr. Schuldner, 3 slides with specifics around how we have invested in our libraries over the last 3 years. I want to be clear that it was really hurtful to see people saying that in the 3 years I've been leading, we've been disinvesting our libraries, when in fact we've been investing hundreds of thousands of dollars. The STAR grant allocated $2,000 for 8 elementary and academy libraries serving grades 4 through 8 in order to provide books with a focus on social justice, social emotional learning, financial literacy, and the LGBTQIA+ for students. The READ grant allocated $2,500 for Willow's Library to focus on updating their nonfiction curricular supports. We realized after weeding that library that the average copyright date was just into the 90s. Most recently, the READ grant allocated $25,500 to be split for K-8 libraries to support the same topics mentioned above. And we were awarded $50,000 for writing the Laura Bush grant. 10 schools got $5,000 each. We used the Tidal Wave Diversity, Equity, Inclusion report that I mentioned to analyze each of our collections and fill the 8 libraries with books reflective of our population. I would like to now defer to my colleague Kim Adams, our Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Budget, to share with you about an increasing in funding from the school level to support libraries.
I mean, Kim, you are allowed to come up to the table if you want. I just think there wasn't enough.
There we go. Thank you, Dr. O'Neill. What I'd like to say is during the spring, we had met with all of our schools. They budgeted for through school-based funding on how they would like their budget set up for fiscal year 25 this year. Our schools in their SIT teams chose to invest more this current year than last year. They increased the budgets by 26%. In addition to the data that Sarah has presented, we had over $300,000 from the READ grant that was invested in school packages. Kids took home books to remain at home for them and their parents to use, $300,000. So we've invested more in libraries than we ever have. Thank you.
Thanks. Now, I would not normally do this with the staff because they know school-based budgeting, but just as a reminder to the community, one of the things that we're really trying to push is spend less money in the central office and spend more money in the schools. And what that means is that principals themselves, and I see some in the audience and just one here, they have more control over how they want to spend their money. And I didn't know this, Kim's saying is that on average, the principals, when given the opportunity to control their budgets, shocking, they chose to increase the number of dollars that they were spending on things like books and literacy. That's great. That's why we do this. We're trying to move very, very far away from this idea that me, some dude in a tie, is going to decide how every school spends their money. What we're trying to say is how many kids you got, this is how much money you get, because that's how we're allocated. Now spend the money you want. And that's really nice to hear that by giving them that authority, the principals have actually increased the money for libraries and books and things like that. All right, that's great. Take it away.
No problem. So the first slide was the library investment in our traditional libraries. I would like to now move to how we're investing in classroom libraries. So we received a RAG grant, which will provide a diverse classroom library with 400 books to every kindergarten and first grade classroom for the schools that are in partnership. And that will be implemented when kids are ready to come back this fall. They've been ordered. The READ grant is picking up the other non-partnership schools so that there is no inequity. This increased the classrooms receiving books from 47 classrooms to now 75 classrooms will receive these classroom libraries. These grants provide access to diverse classroom library for all students all day. The instructional coaches will work with teachers on how to utilize these libraries for instruction, read-alouds, and time on text for students using high-interest books. Research for the books that we chose is based on Dr. Goldie Mohammed's work, who wrote Cultivating Genius, an Equity Framework for Culturally and Historically Responsive Literacy. This is a text that a lot of our staff is familiar with, has read, has been used in professional development, and we've had much success. Creating a print-rich environment throughout the district is our goal, not just the library. Great, just a few more investments. So some more general investments are bookshelves. So we knew when we received the RAG grant in these beautiful classroom libraries that space was going to be an issue. So we allocated $243,300 for bookshelves to support classroom libraries. And a lot of those bookshelves are not stationary. They're flexible, mobile spaces, which is very exciting. On average, we spend...
Sorry, Sarah. So this would allow us to do kind of like that picture where we had flexible spaces and we can move the books around? Okay.
Correct, absolutely. Or project-based learning, or polling based on theme, all of that.
Got it. Thanks.
$70,000 per year for book replacements and adding to library collections is what we're averaging now. And then an ongoing re-grant investment. So $276,386 has been spent on libraries, including books and necessary supplies. The re-grant ensured all K-5 classrooms district-wide had classroom libraries. And the most exciting, that I'm most proud of our board, is $92,300 in forgiven fines due to the board's decision to increase equitable access for all. So, Mr. Schuldiner, I leave you with this thought. All of this collection development and collaboration between departments to revamp our libraries has been done since you've been here under your tenure and taken over. I hope this gives us enough standing for you to listen to us in designing a new K-8 model. That's why we are presenting to you the best way forward.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. But it is kind of amazing, from my standpoint, right, I look at the $220 million that we kind of spend every year, but it really is quite incredible how much money really in the last 3 years, and you have to get a lot of credit too, Sarah. You've been in charge of the library stuff for the last 3 years. I mean, you've really spent a lot of money on books and in the libraries, and if we are to believe you, Christina, that every school has a library and we haven't messed it up, it does seem like we've really invested quite a bit in this. And then the $92,000 board, you did that, so just know that. But I think that's really quite wonderful that we were able to do that. So, all right, well, what's the plan?
All right, to give you an idea how staffing all plays into this, last year we had 7 certified librarians, 3 at the high school, and 4 to cover K-8 grades. Going into the next year, we don't plan to change anything at the high school. 3 will remain, no changes to staffing there. Where we are proposing some changes, though, are in grades K-8. This plans to include 2 certified librarians, and these positions will work with K-8 schools across all of the schools on book selection, curation, maintenance of that collection, but also provide some professional development for the staff. We've posted 34 new instructional assistants across our K-8 schools to support student literacy and library usage, and we're currently hiring folks right now. When it comes to the number of certified library staff, the reduction for next year will be 2 certified librarians. I think it's important to note a couple things, though. All of these folks who served as librarian roles last year are still with us and continue to be employed as educators this upcoming year. There are no firings, no layoffs. They're with us. They're our employees until they choose themselves not to.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So the presentation, what you guys are asking for is we had 7 certified librarians in the schools this year, and this is to go to 5. So it would be a reduction of 2 certified librarians, but all the high school folks stay, and then you're going from 4 certified folks, K-8, to 2, but you're asking for 34, not 3 or 4? Okay, I mean,
2 at each school.
do we have the money for this? Okay, all right. 34 instructional assistants in every K-8 school to support literacy, instruction, and library usage. And I assume, Sarah, you will explain to me how this is all going to work.
Correct.
Great. Keep on going. Clayton, sorry.
All right, well, to talk about the 34 instructional assistants, these are 8-hour positions.
Okay.
Like you said, there's 34, there's 2 for each school. That 8 hours may not seem like that's a change, but it is. It's an hour difference between a typical 7-hour position, and it extends beyond the school day, which allows us the potential opportunity to staff, use those to keep libraries more accessible.
Okay, so the idea here is that they would be kind of instructional assistants in the school doing normal instructional assistant stuff, but because you're making them 8 hours, it would allow the libraries to kind of be open before school and after school. And again, I mean, no joke, folks, this is a question I would ask, and I am asking this, is my experience in some school districts is not having necessarily an assistant in rooms alone with kids, but we're allowed to do that, right? So if we're opening up the library, let's say, kids can be there and stuff like that. Okay, so the idea here is every school, all of our K-8s, now the high schools are different because they have the librarians already there. What you're saying is this would allow the K-8 schools to have an adult in a employee in the schools before school and after school, so kids could use the library. All right.
As well as other literacy.
Right. I
Not
mean,
just
clearly they're
sit
going to be
there,
helping
right.
kids throughout the day. They're not going to just sit on their hands. But this is the novel thing that I guess this is why you wanted to present this. Okay, I get it. Thanks.
I think on the next slide, Dr. Neal will explain like what this means for our kids, like in the context of schools and programming. So.
Absolutely. So hearing the HR director, we're going to advocate for a new model that will help all children. This past year, students had access to library for only 1 semester, and they went to the library 1 to 2 times per week. The other semester, our libraries remained dark. This means that our KA students across the district had very little access to the library in our current model. The current model does not work for our students. In addition to not having
Wait, I'm sorry. I mean, you know I visit a school every day, and I'm in classrooms all the time, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, that the old model or the current model is that kids had library basically 1 semester a year, but even then, they only got to go to the library like once a week?
unless otherwise arranged with the librarian, yes.
Got it. Okay.
Moving
That
on.
doesn't seem like, okay, anyway, I'll keep my responses to later. So the idea is, the old model or the current model is one library kind of a semester, and then when the librarian's not there during that semester, the library is just kind of closed?
Yes,
Oh.
the
Okay.
argument would be to protect our collection, but it blocked access.
Protect the collection, the books are gonna like attack the children, or the children are
Not
gonna attack the,
attack the-
okay.
Just
I
resources that we invested while
Got
we were
it.
out the door.
I will say, just so everybody understands, I'm a big fan of kids should have access to stuff, and if they take a book home, God bless. I will say, I don't know if I've ever shared this story, is when I was a principal, we started an acre organic farm in our school. Our school was in some might consider a difficult neighborhood, and the response I got was, Ben, if you open a farm in your school, people are just going to steal the vegetables. And my response was, if they want a carrot, they can have a carrot. So I am concerned if the pedagogy of the district was about protecting the things and not our children. I would much rather us to think about how our kids can have more access to things, which I assume is where you're going to go. But that is, I'm glad you brought that up, Sarah. Thank you for elucidating that. Okay, so what are you advocating for?
So in addition, well, I'm not done.
Oh, you're not done, sorry.
In
sorry.
addition to not having a lot of time, what we were doing in the library instructionally wasn't working. We know this because all of the investment has only led to lower proficiency rates. What I've seen in the libraries is that some teachers do not have a fully developed curriculum, as they only see the students once a week, and they don't have the chance to build strong relationships. It's not because they don't want to. They don't have the time. This affects the classroom management in the learning environment across multiple weeks, which adds up. The libraries, as we have them now, are only open once to twice a week, and it doesn't work for building strong literacy skills.
Okay, so I mean, you know, you have your doctorate, I don't. You're much better at finishing their classwork than I am. But, you know, I want to make sure we're not doing a kind of correlation versus causation. But what I'm hearing is, hey, look, we haven't had good literacy rates for a long time. Maybe this isn't the right way of doing it. That's the argument. Not that we can prove that whatever we're doing, but it's a fair point. It's a fair point. So we've been doing all this investment. Our literacy rates haven't really moved. You're going to say, hey, maybe there's somewhere better.
Correct.
All right, I got it.
So we are asking you to help us be creative in expanding access to books. By keeping 2 certified librarians to oversee the K-8 collection, they will also be able to provide thorough professional development to the 34 instructional assistants we are asking for. In this new model, students would access the library before and after school or during lunch. Our collections will remain protected under our certified positions. Additionally, it opens up opportunity to invite our parents and community in to help us with check-in, check-out, and shelving once they've obviously been trained under our librarians. Our K-8 model, Mr. Schuldner, must change. The system we are proposing will best help our students increase time on text and achieve mastery of all things literacy so that they can move on to become competitive in multiple contexts and arenas.
Okay. So, Kim, I assume this is going to cost me more, but it is what it is? Okay. You can tell the look that my assistant superintendent of budget gives me is, yes, this is going to cost a lot more, but I get it. So really the argument here is we have 3 high school librarians. They're going to stay. They do the stuff in the high schools. We had 4 certified librarians in the K-8. You're going to go to 2. The 2 are going to be kind of more district-wide, making sure the collections are okay and they're organized or whatever, but that this dark time, this closed time is going to kind of cease to exist because you want to open it up and make the libraries much more accessible to our kids before school, after school, during school, et cetera, et cetera. And the hope, and I want to make sure I heard this correctly, is that the 2 K-8 district-wide librarians are really doing professional development to help work with those assistants. Are they also going to do PD for the teachers too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We seek to do that, and we really seek to have a system that is sustainable
Okay.
and that we may have to change in iterations, but that will be long-standing.
Okay.
Mr. Superintendent, in addition, the flexibility of having more access to our libraries will benefit a large number of students participating in special education and English language development pull-out programs. In these programs, students receive specialized and targeted instruction, which frequently causes them to miss their scheduled library time. By having more flexible access, teachers can assist their students in selecting resources that align with their levels of literacy, subjects, and current content taught in the classroom.
So, Sergio, he usually doesn't call me Mr. Schuldner. He wears a tie. Sergio's more formal than I am. So you're telling me that typically our ML kids and special ed kids and the kids that need extra support, a lot of times they're pulled out during things like library time? I gotcha. Okay. And this will help fix that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And teachers spend 80 to 90% of the day with their students, and no one is better fit to assist students with academic growth than their own teacher. So, by giving teachers the opportunity to be more involved in the usage of the libraries, it allows for a greater impact in developing literacy among all students.
Okay.
Sadly, our scores have not been great, so these strategies are just another effort to do something different and more effective.
Okay.
So, as we move forward, Ms. Stoker will describe and explain how our new school libraries are going to look like.
Got it.
So Ben, I know you've seen this before.
Yes. This is the slide everybody knows that I have seen, because this is a building that is being built pretty soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to reiterate kind of how we went through the process of how we design our new builds and how we go over what our community and student and parent involvement is. So for the new Mount Hope, we actually went in through field day with the students. And we started with them first, and our kids, of course, love to ask for really awesome things and really creative things. In this case, including unicorns, ponies, and a pool, which, I don't know where to find a unicorn, but, pools and ponies, not so much. But they could always take, a bus out to Ebersol or, out to our riding center for the ponies. So I just kind of wanted to go over that process and hearing from the feedback from our parents, from our students, they really did want kind of a more traditional learning environment, and with the new Mount Hope being a 5-8, it was kind of important for them for the fifth graders to kind of have their own space. So in the upper left is that fifth grade hallway, and then our 6th through 8th graders are departmentalized since we started to move back to that. So they're going to be able to move more freely throughout the space. So that was important to kind of section out the 5th graders for the staff and parents. So we did that. Different cafeteria, different gym, of course, that's very important. And then the shaded pink area is the new media center library. So I also kind of wanted to point out that that's the largest space in the school outside of the gym and the cafeteria. One of the reasons for that is moving to one of those more modern environments. So having those digital spaces, having the collaborative environment, those soft spaces, the movable furniture, and really being able to use that space for the modern learning of our students.
Right, so we are lucky enough to have the current and hopefully future principal of Mount Hope. We really, I want the community to know just how terrific Nicole's been. In just 1 year of leading that school, we've seen a pretty great turnaround. So I do remember this slightly because I remember being there when the kids were asking for like a pool and horses, but the way that we derived this was we talked to kids, we talked to parents, we talked to staff, and because they knew it was going to be a 5-8 school, they really said, look, we want a 5th grade section, and then the rest is kind of more traditional because the kids, the 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders move classrooms
Correct.
around.
Yep.
They wanted a kind of more traditional library,
Yep.
at least in terms of having a big room called library. But I do also remember that the big ask was to have a separate gym from the cafeteria.
Correct. That was
Okay,
super
great.
important. Yes.
Great. So I don't know, Nicole, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just great to see you. If there's anything you want to add about, your conversations with families or the teachers, if they're happy with this, how this came about, whatever you want. It's just nice to see you, so.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. So our students are really, this is what they wanted. They're looking forward to our new building. We are really excited when I think of 21st Century Library Media Center. So I'm closing my eyes, literally picturing an environment where our students are walking in, are able to read and find countless resources. Now I'm going to open my eyes again. So countless resources where there's collaboration with teachers, where there's explorations. Students are reading books. When they have projects, they can get online and do some research. They can work at grade level, and this way our literacy program, program is more robust, where students are actually, there is equity because our students deserve that. So we are really looking forward to 21st century library setting
Great.
for our students.
Well, I'm glad to hear the kids like it. I remember them really wanting their own gym. That was a really big thing. And then those little pop-out things, I know that somebody in the community thought that they were somehow like holding cells for children, but they are in fact those nooks
They're
where
reading
kids can,
nooks.
they're reading
so
nooks.
Yeah, specifically designed for each
Good.
classroom for reading nooks.
Good, but we still, of course, have the big library that they wanted,
Yes.
and that's it.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, sounds good. So this is the new Mount Hope,
This is
and
the new Mount Hope.
and I know this. I don't mean to kind of be facetious here. Remind everybody, when should this open? When will we get the new Mount Hope?
There is no should. It's happening.
Okay, when
I
is
will
the new
make
Mount
sure
Hope
of that.
opening?
The new Mount Hope is happening after next school year, so the
Okay.
fall of 2025.
Okay, so we welcome the community. I don't think we're going to do much when it's still under construction, but I promise that when it's ready for people, we would love to show it. This is the first new build in decades. It's something we're really, really proud of, and it's going to be a brand new building from the ground up. And if you drive by it now, you can see a lot of it. I have not been inside yet, but I guess I'm allowed to. I just have to wear a hard hat. So, all right, so this is the new Mount Hope. What's
Yes.
next?
Yep, so next I want to go into our next new build, which is our new Willow. So one of the major things that we heard from the community when we were going out for the bond, again, thank you, community, for that, since you're here, was that they really, really wanted the 7th and 8th graders out of the high school. It was a resounding, I think it was like 85% of the input that we had back was get the 7th and 8th graders out of the high schools and back more into a middle school or K-8 model. So we're shifting to that, and the new Willow that we're building was previously a pre-K 4, and we're actually expanding it to a pre-K 8 school. So we're helping provide some of that and expand the upper grade levels into the Willow community. This helps with multi-child families. As you know, we have several families that could have a student in kindergarten, 3rd grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. They can all be in one location, and it fosters longer-term relationships. While doing this, though, we did have family concerns about having the younger students actively interacting with the older students on a consistent basis. So they like the idea of having these smaller learning communities within the school. So that idea of having a campus model, having separate learning communities branched out from that. And so the campus model that we have designed with the families is they're standalone buildings or houses, what we like to call them, with different classrooms, bathrooms, and a shared space, including individual libraries in those houses. Okay. So rather than having books in just one room in this space, we have 2 of the houses have libraries in them, and those libraries are the size of a classroom. So when entering the pod and coming in, there are libraries, and I'll go ahead and flip forward so you can kind of see those in the pink. Okay. And then along with that, in our K through 2 pod, we have those more individualized classroom library collections with those soft learning spaces, still those modern environments that we're gonna build in right into the classroom, opposed to having the central library in the pod.
And this was really done, I mean, I remember these conversations was, when I got here, the community really wanted to take the 7th and 8th graders out of the high schools. We created these 7-8s, but there was a concern about having the younger kids and the older kids kind of all walking together, going to the same place, et cetera. So the model of 3 separate houses for the K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, but the 2 older buildings, older kid buildings, they get their own library.
They get their own library. That's
it's
in the
not
pink.
one central one, it's one
Correct.
for each of the houses.
Correct, yep, and those are in the pink. And then the K through 2 are the smaller green areas, but those in relation are a little bit larger, and they have the movable carts again and the soft spaces that are movable to create.
Right, and the big thing that I remember speaking to the faculty was they really wanted to make sure that that pathway was covered.
Absolutely, and it is
And we are
covered.
going to cover
Correct,
it. Okay.
it is being covered.
Good,
Yes.
good.
Yep, in addition, and then additional with the pods too is creating kind of a sense of community within those smaller learning communities. So with Willow, we wanted to honor like the history of the willow tree. And so each pod kind of has its own identity, its own color, from going from like seedlings in the younger pods and then showing the tree growing. So we have a theme throughout the school, but they also have their own external learning environments too for each house. So that's one of the other things that we made sure kind of really they can all come together as an entire school in those larger spaces, but can also stay within their smaller learning communities.
Got it. So really the families, the kids, parents, teachers, the idea was to give them kind of a separate space, their own outdoor space, their own indoor space, and they get their own bathrooms, their own library,
Right.
et cetera.
Correct.
Get it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
But they still have like art, music.
Art, music.
PE. I can't see that
Yep,
far.
it's okay.
Just-
Yep, so the gymnasium, the art room, the music room is right off of the cafeteria. So what we did for that is the cafeteria is going to be our performance space. You can kind of have back of house in the music area and go right into the cafeteria for performance. We've got STEM labs, we've got collaborative spaces, special education spaces, sensory rooms, lots of different things. And as well with the soft seating in the library areas and in the classrooms, we're also working on sensory items as well in the houses.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And as you know, Luton is going to be our third build, so we haven't developed anything fully yet. So Willow is under construction. As you all know, we took down Willow. We are currently working to build Willow. Even just 2 days ago, we had our second parent meeting with our Luton families to go over what they would like to see in the community. We originally, since Luton is a pre-K-8, we kind of took the Willow model and presented it to them and said, hey, this is what the Willow community, this is what it looks like. Here's the different learning environments, the pods, and what we've been hearing back from the Luton families is they want one central library. That means something to them very much so. So they want one central library, and they really want to keep the learning environments enclosed. So it's not really coming across that they want the same things as Willow, which is completely fine. Every community wants something a little bit different. So I think we're going to need to continue to work with them and shift back more to a traditional school layout, because that's something that the families want there.
But if we create the one singular library for Luton, which is fine if that's what the families want, it would still be more of the modern, like, media
Correct.
center, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
It would just be the one for all K-8.
Correct, absolutely.
And so if the families want it, so the idea is that the kindergarten kid and the 8th grade kid are all going to the same space.
got it.
They wanted just a more traditional model.
yes.
And this came from what?
The
meeting
parent
that-
meeting we had two days ago, we're having another one next week, but we
Great.
had quite a bit of turnout, and that was quite the consensus.
And it was
among the
pretty
group.
clear, like
Oh, it
the
was very
major-
clear.
Okay.
Yes, it was
So-
very clear.
So then it sounds like with Luton, you're going to kind of go back to the drawing board,
Correct.
or just a more traditional build.
Correct,
One library,
Yes.
and then kind of more enclosed space.
correct, yep.
Okay.
Yep, so we'll continue to work with the families over the next couple of months.
Okay.
On that, yep.
Sounds good.
So I want to hand it back over to Sergio to kind of wrap us up.
Great.
Mr. Superintendent, we are in the 21st century. Our kids come first. We will have more access to books and libraries by keeping them open. We want to make sure that we share this recommendation with you so you can have a thoughtful decision about the future of libraries in our schools. Thank you. And-
Absolutely. I will build on that. Mr. Schuldner, I've led for 3 years on making our libraries better. The last thing I want is for us is to regress. I, along with the instructional division and the special populations department, believe that going from 7 librarians to 5 librarians, while increasing access tenfold for our students, drastically continuing investing in books, which we've been doing, equipment and new builds is the way forward. I hope that you take this recommendation to heart.
Okay, thanks. So typically what I would do is now ask them a bunch of questions, but they also already took an hour, and I know we have lots of other things to do, and I'm sure there's lots of comments and things like that we'll get to when it's time. But what I'm hearing, just so that I can wrap this up, is all of the libraries are still the libraries. We haven't closed down a single library. The only library is the Pat and Gill thing, and that's because we're building the new thing and whatever. And whatever the rumor about Luton's library is just false. Great, good to know. I will say, I don't go into the buildings during the summer as often, so I'm glad you took pictures. What I'm hearing is that currently we have 7 certified librarians, 3 at the high school, 4 in the middle school, or K-8s. You're advocating to go from, keep the 3, but go from 4 to 2, but really make them more district-wide. But, I mean, just so I understand, you had 4 certified librarians in the whole district for K-8. Percentage-wise, that's pretty low for the number of schools. So you're really talking about going from 4 to 2, so that the 2 of them, whoever they are, can really help make and create the books and the whole, you know, kind of the whole way of making sure that they can order right and organize them, et cetera. But that you want 34, that you want 34 assistants to really get trained so that these libraries can stay open all the time. What I'm also hearing is Mount Hope, you want a more traditional, you're getting more traditional, but a lot of it is because you're a 5-8 school, and those kids kind of move around a lot, and there's no reason, there's no house for them to live in. It's all in one thing. The Willow community kind of like that thing, but as of, 2 days ago, the Luton families are pretty clear what they want. Fine, you know, parents and kids and teachers should have a pretty big voice. So I will take this under advisement. Again, I want to be very clear to everybody in the audience and whoever's listening at home and whatever news stations are still here, I will take it under advisement, meaning we haven't made any decisions. We will try to make decisions pretty quickly. Certainly, the board can ask whatever questions they want, but this is how it would go. They would probably not call me Mr. Schuldner, but this is what they would do, and they're doing it. And we wanted the community to see this because the last thing we want is for there to be any sort of misconceptions about what we're doing. In the last 3 years, this district has changed inexorably for the good. But I will say, and a little bit of privilege here is like, as somebody who's not from here, it's kind of sad that I see a lot of just overt negativity around the district. I feel like there's the Ginger Rogers effect. Right? She had to do everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards and in heels. And so I just want to make sure that what I'm hearing is we haven't closed any libraries down. We're contemplating a really thoughtful and new way of thinking about books and literacy to add access to kids, more times in libraries, more times this. Sarah, you've worked your tail off for 3 years about this. That's what you're asking for.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm not going to promise anything, but I will certainly take it under advisement, and certainly I will defer to my bosses here. But I think this is really powerful, and I really hope that that you feel heard, because I know all of you and many of the other staff members have felt kind of put upon over the last couple of weeks. All of your really hard work being kind of changed in a way that nobody really thought was real. So thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Before you all scurry, just a moment. I know this isn't typically how this happens. So the superintendent started out as he led into his presentation. I don't actually know if you have more. No. There's no gas card. There's no gas cards or anything like that to report on this week, right? Not yet. We wouldn't typically have this conversation because you aren't actually bringing a formal recommendation to the board to consider. We did this as the superintendent said, there's a lot of information out there, and additionally, it's important that we have an increasingly transparent process with our community whenever we make major decisions. It was incredibly maddening to hear since the last board meeting, either in the media or on social media, that because there had been a conversation with 7 members of our staff about where we could place them, that was interpreted to mean that the district was intentionally disinvesting in libraries and literacy in our school district. The purpose of this presentation was an opportunity to show that nothing was further from the truth, and that is not in any shape or form the intent or recommendation that's even under consideration from this district. I had written a couple questions down that I was hoping to have answered during this presentation, and a lot of them were answered. One of those questions was, how much have we invested in libraries over the last couple of years? You guys covered that in the presentation. I was going to ask, Ms. Tokar, you started out by saying, we have libraries in all of our buildings, and I was going to reiterate, not just our old buildings, but our new buildings as well. We just hit on that. I wanted us to talk about what's our current access to libraries with librarians, and what does that look like? You guys absolutely hit on that. I also understand that librarians have, there's a reason why we use the word certified librarians as opposed to just district staff, right? Like there's ways for us to access libraries or for kids to be taught how to use a computer and log onto computers, and they get access to how to understand literacy in the classroom. But having an actual library access is unique, right? Like that's a process, learning how to check out books. I mean, kids these days don't have to pull out an encyclopedia to look things up now, but it's still a process, right? So we talked about maintaining 5 certified librarians in the role of librarian within the district and having 34 instructional assistants. Are we going to do anything special with those 34 instructional assistants to make them more unique than maybe a lunchtime aid instructional assistant or something like that, to kind of make up for that gap? I know we talked about the 2 librarians that are going to be our K-8 librarians will do PD, but are we doing anything unique with that job posting or anything to recruit? Or planning to?
Yeah. So I already spoke about the 1 extra hour to give them,
sure.
Right, that makes them unique. And actually I hope we see some people move from 7 to 8 and actually accept these roles and say, like, that's a better fit for me. I'm going to take that. The focus is on literacy with these. They're not lunch aids. So they're
Right.
not going to be sitting in, and also they're not babysitters in the library. They're expected to be instructional assistants. And, you know, when we're thinking about hiring good staff, we want to look at who we already have that could fill these roles, and also bringing in people that are literacy focused. Right? We don't want these, we have to swing in the recruiting that this is about literacy, this isn't about babysitting. And I think that a lot of times, you know, instructional assistants might get, you know, get the short end of the stick in terms of their value in a school, and I want to emphasize their value in this.
Thank you. That was exactly what I was looking for. Final question, because it was on the slide now, I need more information about it. So one of the slides talked about the new models, and it said that the new model will increase AMPE access, so the art, music, PE over the semester. Can you just tell us how does that work out as an interplay?
Absolutely. So with this new model, our art, music, and PE, not only have we been able to increase FTE, but they will see the children every day. So
Okay.
relationships will be deeper, we'll be able to go much deeper into the content, and that will benefit.
So the new model not only will help have access to literacy, but it also allows us to reallocate our resources so that AMPE is amplified as well.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there any other questions from my colleagues? Mr. Lopez?
Thank you. I think I have a couple of questions. The first one, is there any study out there that looks at our students' benefit of digital books versus a book? And how, is there any data that gives any kind of comparison in terms of learning and, you know, keeping what they learn? Either way?
Yes. So as a team, we're always reviewing the latest research. I would have to look into the specifics of digital versus print. I would be happy to get that information and get back to you. But yes, we do review research to make sure we're innovative in all areas.
So I'm not against spending money on books, that's fine. But with the new technologies, I mean, you know, a student can check out the book, maybe on their iPhone or on their computer, they take it home.
Absolutely.
So is there any study about that? Best practices, whatever.
There are. One thing that we utilize very deeply, though, is with CATL, all of our students have access digitally to the collection in the Capital Area District Library. So they have tons of access to the digital as well, and our staff makes sure that they're aware of that. They spend lessons on how to log in and to utilize that.
So are there new practices for librarians in using technology rather than, you know, as not in place of, but in addition to?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And how?
Absolutely.
How does
So
that-
the American Association of Library Standards is very heavy technology focused and digital citizenship and digital responsibility. And so part of the duties of the 2 certified librarians that will be providing professional development is to train our instructional assistants in that, as well as general ed teachers to uplift their skill set to be able to use that in the classroom.
And one thing, Guillermo, if you don't mind, so there has been, it's early because the digital stuff is so new. There is some research that's showing that, especially for younger kids, the tactile sense of like touching books and being with books is sometimes better. Being surrounded by print is good, but you're right, the modern world is digital. We have to make sure that we're doing both, getting the kids to love books and love learning, but also having the skills to use the kind of 21st century things. And I think what we've been doing is really trying to infuse as much technology in our libraries as we can, but also still have the kind of paper books. You know, one big study that's been for years is, you know, the number of books in a house, the number of words that are being kind of around, that's really powerful. So the more that we can surround our kids with those books and the digital, it will hopefully be a better thing.
Yeah. And finally, with books, obviously, they're written right there. I wonder how new technology works to protect. And now with this new AI, you know, and how does that, what impact will that have in the technology area, in the
That's a
digital area.
loaded question, sir.
Well, it's coming, it's here.
It is.
So I think that we need to look at that. But and the last question I have is, how much capacity do our older schools have for digital instruction or libraries? Because I know our new ones are going to have plenty, but our current libraries.
For secondary, are we speaking about?
No, on the elementary
You wanna-
through high.
Yeah. So all of our, kind of as I showed earlier, and you can't really see the size of the libraries, but they all have a library within them that are all the same size or larger than a classroom. And those libraries are not currently full of books, but that's why we're spending on money loading in new tech. So we've got the room to continue to bring in increased digital resources and new library books as well in those spaces.
And those are available through digital form too.
Through the what? I'm sorry.
They're available
Digital.
digitally?
I don't know what our book collection,
We have not moved to purchasing digital collection as a district because we have that resource through CATL that we teach. It's a pretty significant investment, and you can only check it out so many times. That would have to be a long-term planning investment that we are open to, but we have not taken that leap yet.
Yeah.
That's what I was
thank
going to
you.
ask Mr. Lopez. Are you asking, do we need to move towards considering investing in digital media and expanding? Is that the question, depending on what the research may say? And
I think we're going to have to anyway, but currently, the question is currently, our libraries have, how much access do they have to digital technology?
Media.
Oh, they have access to digital
All of them?
technology, yes.
Okay.
And they bring their Chromebooks in. I was speaking of access to texts digitally that are housed in our collection.
Perfect.
Yep, I just
Thank you.
wanted to say, just as a reminder, we're work towards a 2-to-1 ratio, so all of our students have a Chromebook or iPad within the school, and then the ability to take one home as well, separate from that. So we allow them to take that around to the school, have access to the digital libraries through CATL.
I don't know how many of you have hearing aids, but this is not a great place
The acoustics
for
aren't
hearing
great,
aid
sorry.
users.
Next time we'll bring,
Cheering and stomping.
next time we'll bring the band shells in or something to help with the acoustics. Sorry, Mr. Lopez. Were you all set with your questions? Okay, thank you. Ms. Williams?
Madam President, so we did a lot of focusing on our K through 8. We did not talk a lot about the 9 through 12. That is a strong suit right there because that's the point where they're preparing for college writing. We did not say what upgrades, what modifications we're going to be doing, what things are going to be in place for them. Literacy is always forever, and I know as a student, the library was my place to go. That's how I learned. So that's my first question. How are we going to be advancing and making sure that the 9th through 12th graders are getting the ongoing things that the K through 8 are getting?
Absolutely. So our secondary schools will be fully staffed with certified librarians. All 3 of them are strong. They stay there all day in the library, and they collaborate with general ed on how to teach research and the different literary units. And they are a place of refuge for some students and open after school. And our librarians have great relationships with the secondary students. And so we would want to continue that. I also want to let you know that Everett in particular has invested a significant amount of money at the school level to update the library itself and the furniture and the collaboration spaces. So students are having wild success with liking to be in there to do their projects and their research and their writing. So we ultimately hope to update the other 2 to be similar to Everett.
Okay, so let me build on that because within the high schools, we do have multiples of children with special ed. So are any of those 34 assistants going to be added into those high schools to assist those certified librarians to work with those children who need that extra when that librarian is not available?
Always. We always want to be inclusive with our assistants in every content area.
Okay, my next question was, is there some type of way that, I know we're moving towards 21st century, we have to, there's no doubt about that, but the traditional setting of a library should still remain. Is there some way we can merge the traditional with what we're trying to do modern while maintaining the integrity of what a library should be?
So the plan is to not get rid of any of the library spaces itself. It's just to continue to bring it into the modernness. So when I think of a traditional library, which some of our schools still have while we're working to move it into modern, tables, wood chairs, library shelves. You know, our students like to find comfort and refuge in soft spaces, my child included, in this very building, seeks refuge in the library. So while we're talking about going modern, it's creating some of those additional spaces like Dr. O'Neill just talked about, where they can do lots of different things in the library. Can still be a quiet space for some, soft seating, somewhere to find something that helps them sensory. But also at the same time to have collaborative environment, writing projects, those types of things. So it's not meant to take away library. It's going to change from the library we knew it as growing up, but that's where our students are headed. But it's meant to still create that space and keep that space available for them.
I guess, let me expound on that. When I say the integrity of the library, being able to understand how to do a research paper from start to finish, using the Dewey Decimal System, going to the card catalog, because again, everything is digital now, and with everything being digital, we can cheat. Let's just be real. We can cheat. We can plagiarize. I think that's what's affecting our children, their learning, their literacy, and why our scores are not going up, because we're becoming more inundated into the changing. Instead of teaching paper, pencil, then we go to the computer. Does that make sense?
I do hear you, yes, ma'am. And our high school libraries, I think if you review the standards that they're teaching, are very inclusive of both things that you're talking about. So there are lessons in how to navigate the library, how to research, how to use databases, how to evaluate and be critical of the information you're looking at, because just because it's labeled nonfiction does not mean it's true. Being critical thinkers, all of that is covered.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Nowinski?
Expand on the note that was on the staffing slide. It said that we have more librarians than other districts in Ingham County, I believe. So I'm curious if you could speak to what that meant, or.
I can, if that's okay. Yeah, you know, it's, again, one of the fascinating things about this whole conversation that's happened over the last month is just to like put all of this in perspective. Waverly, the great Waverly School District, has 0 certified librarians. East Lansing, I think, has 1 certified librarian. It's interesting that the press and the social media wants to talk about, you know, what we're doing. I always wonder where everybody else is all of this, but I would say that even with this new model of going to 5 certified librarians, not only would we have the highest number of librarians, we would actually still have the highest per capita as well. I want to give mad props to Mason. Mason has 3. And they only have about, I think, 3,500 kids. But the Lansing School District will continue to have the most certified librarians in the area and per capita as well, except for, I think, Mason. And you know, I love East Lansing and Waverly. I'm not trying to throw them under the bus here, but most of the school districts in the area, so we're in the Ingham ISD, and it's funny, I had no idea Dan was going to ask this question. I actually printed this out because I was curious. Dansville 0, East Lansing 1, Hazlitt 0.65, Holt 1, Lansing, that's us, Leslie 0, Mason 3, Okemos 2, Stockbridge 0, Waverly 0, Weberville 0, Williamston 0. Now look, to compare us to Weberville is certainly not fair, but in general, we have a preponderance of the number of librarians per kid than almost anywhere else. And in fact, sadly, most school districts in America, which tend to be small, tend to not have full kind of certified librarians. So we still, even in this model, because I was curious, with 5 would still be really quite good. I've never seen 34 instructional assistants in that, so.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Sure, Dr. Rodriguez?
Thank you very much, Madam
Just
President. I want to tell everybody how much I enjoy this hour and a half. Because if you want to know about knowledge, you have to go to the libraries. I'm thinking about the Alexandria Library. I'm thinking about the Congress Library. A place, a city without a library is a very poor city. I'm so glad we are having buildings with libraries. I am concerned about the other issues around the libraries. I agree with what Mr. Lopez about new technology, the AI, the new role of the libraries. We are not eliminating, we are transforming. And I will ask, Madam President, with your permission, that you gave us to the Board of Education in writing a plan for the libraries, containing not only the buildings, the people who are moving their library knowledge to our students. I want to see the plan. I want the plan in writing. I want the plan to be approved by the board.
As soon as he approves this plan, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Krim?
Yeah, just had a couple of questions. So I know you mentioned it's going to be opened after and before school. It's an extra hour. Is it half hour before, half hour after? How's that going to work?
So that's the potential, right? With school-based budgeting decisions at the school level, you can decide maybe we have more need in the beginning of the day. Students come in. Maybe it's after school. I think that's going to really depend on the need of the school. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's half hour before. Maybe it's half hour after. It's the option there that gives access, and I think that we're not in a position to decide every school is going to do an hour after. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add is not only would, Nicole or whoever the principal is make that decision, but that's also not the limit. I think, and again, this is new to me, if the idea is to bring these folks in to do it, this would be kind of the lowest level. It's possible that Nicole could say, I'm going to put somebody in for 5 hours and keep the library open. I think with this, I'm assuming this presentation is the expectation is that it would be a total of an hour. Maybe it's 30 and 30. Maybe we know that the students really like being after school, so it's an hour after school, not in the morning. That's really up to a principal.
Okay. So just to make sure I'm understanding, those 34 positions are new positions? They're going to be all outside or inside hires? I mean, I'm sure we don't know just yet until it's approved, but that's the expectation that there are going to be new full-time positions.
Yeah, so we never know, so we always allow staff, of course, then they want room for advancement, and like Clayton mentioned, if we have 7-hour assistants that want to move up to 8 hours, that's great. We're going to get a blend of internal and external.
Okay. So these positions, I know since they're not certified librarians, are they certified or trained? How does that work?
They're going to need deep and thorough training, which is why we're asking for the 2 certified, who are the experts in the field, under my direction, to plan it out and have a sustainable system built.
So the expectation then is for the 2 librarians to train all 34?
Correct. Plus do some training for general ed teachers.
Okay.
And Clayton, not to put you on the spot, but, and Josh, if it's okay, just can you walk us through what the general expectation of instructional assistants are? Like in order to get that job, what do they need? And then there's extra training that we would be getting.
Sure, yeah. So, you have your credit hours limits, but you can also pass an ETS test, the Parapro test, if you don't have college credit. So really, I mean, the entry level is low. We're looking for people that coming in with skills and the willingness to help out kids. So that part of it is the limits for hiring. But once they're here, we want to know, how are you supporting our teachers? How are you supporting not just watching kids when the teacher's over here? What are you doing to support the instruction, the lesson planning, the assessment that's happening, and taking the teacher's lead? So there's a lot that instructional assistants do to support the teacher moves, the certified teacher. I think that that job description is to support the instruction that's happening in the buildings, but when we're adding on literacy as a focus, that becomes now a little bit more training needed. We need them to understand the basics of the science of reading, structured literacy, things like that, and in addition to how that translates to what it is in the library. Like, how does that translate over to the usage of the library to support?
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to check okay, Mr. Lopez?
Thank you. Just one last question, and probably we don't have to talk about it right now, Mr. Superintendent, but I would imagine that with these changes and additions, we were having conversations with the bargaining unit on those changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, to put all this in perspective, again, the reason why the community didn't necessarily see a full-throated defense about the libraries and how much we care about books is so much of decisions like this have to be made in negotiations with unions and with labor, and so there's no question. I mean, imagine saying to a bargaining unit, we're about to create 34 new positions. It's a lot of positions. Even though Lansing's relatively big, we have about 1,500 employees. 34 extra folks in one bargaining unit's pretty big. So if, again, the presentation's now, we'll talk about it. If we decide to go down this road, it would be a huge conversation with the LEA. We can still create these positions, and I think we are, regardless of what's going to happen in terms of, really trying to support the libraries. We need to create just more people to help our kids. But yeah, we would absolutely talk to LEA as well as LSEA in terms of these kinds of conversations.
Thank you. All right, thank you guys, for real this time, for real, thank you. Mr. Superintendent, do you have any additional information to share as part of your report?
I mean, only to say that I hope everybody enjoyed this. Everybody is more than welcome to always come to my office. I think I've never turned anybody away. This is kind of how we do. We try to really be thoughtful and transparent and be pretty public. And, I think anybody who's ever emailed me gets a response pretty quickly, even if you don't like it. But this is the kind of fun stuff that I hope you see that we're really trying to do collectively. You've got great leaders, principals, directors, COOs, deputy superintendents. There's very nice about speaking about their own children. I think there's something really powerful about our own district folks sending their kids even to this building, and that's really quite wonderful. So I want to thank them. I want to thank the board. Again, the attendance rates that I mentioned, I'm really proud of, because that's something that we've been really working hard on, and we'll see what we can do. But I appreciate the presentation, and we'll take it under advisement.
Great, thank you. That moves us on to the agenda, which brings us to our routine matters. First item this evening is a committee report for Facilities Committee. Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, Madam President. Facilities Committee met a couple of days ago. We reviewed 3 items that are in your packet for discussion and approval. They're the ones for the Willow Elementary School food service equipment. We have some work on Pettingill on the modular units, associated with the modular units. And we have the third one associated with the Hill Track project. So as we get to approval, if people have any questions, we can try to answer them between Mr. Krim and I, and of course, our staff. So that's what we have for this evening.
Thank you. So, Mr. Lopez, I see on the consent agenda this evening, we have the food service equipment bid, a change order for the Hill Track, and a change order request for the Pettingill molder, the mobile modular, the bill that's happening in Pettingill. Is that all that we have this evening
Well, as for general discussion, we have the issue with the Greenlink,
Got it.
okay?
Okay.
And this is a separate item that we will be
Perfect.
dealing with.
Since the food service equipment and Hill Track and Pat and Go are on the consent agenda, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask Mr. Lopez or ask for us to be pulled off of the consent agenda.
Mr. Krim, do you have anything else to add on that? No? Okay,
Okay,
so we don't.
perfect. Any questions for Mr. Lopez? Seeing none, I'm going to move us on to our Personnel Committee report. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Williams.
So I'm looking at the food service category one, so we're not, according to these 3 bids, are we rebidding out because it says no for all of those? Or are we going with Great Lake West? I'm sorry, I'm just getting
The-
clarification.
No, no.
Oops, sorry. The part where it says no is just that it's not a tri-county vendor. So where it says no tri-county vendor, yes, it's a Michigan vendor, no, not minority-owned, not female-owned. But the one that is highlighted, which is Great Lakes West, that is the vendor that we're recommending.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't scroll all the way down,
No,
so
that's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
That's okay.
I was like, wait a minute. Okay. Seeing any other questions this evening? All right, Mr. Lopez, floor is still yours with you and Mr. Nowinski to give us the Personnel Committee update.
Yes, the Personnel Committee met on June 28th. We talked about a couple of different efforts that the HR department is doing to fill teaching positions in particular with international teachers and through Teach for America. We also talk about other recruitment efforts for all staff positions. You know, we're getting updated on the busyness of the summer and trying to hire, and it looks like we will have less vacancies than we've had, so it's going in the right direction. We also talked about kind of tracking grievances and what that looks like for the district, some special projects, some questions about retention and exit interviews that the board has lifted up in the meetings before. And I know Dr. Martinez has been working with the department on some projects on that regards. And then looking at the report that we typically get during the school year on resignations, retirements, new hires, and what should be in that report and how we want it to be structured. So we might have some changes. We're going to talk more about that in our next meeting on how and when we want that report to come to the board in future meetings.
Perfect. Sure thing, Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. How we don't have the report from the human research teachers, people leaving, retirements, and all that is not here today.
Yep, so to incorporate everything that we're doing, it'll be in our board meeting next month, the August 1st board meeting.
I will see it. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Nowinski, are we also talking about creating an onboarding process for new hires, or is there one already in place that will create a path for continued learning and growth?
The committee's only discussion was about some of these new programs that we're working with, but in general, I think the staff would.
I just want to make sure I heard the question. Just, are we working on onboarding for our new staff?
As they come in, is there an onboarding procedure
Sure.
that continues to cause growth and monitoring where we're not seeing a turnover at year 1 or year 6 months like we've been seeing in the past?
Sure.
Are we revising that?
Sure. Well, I'd say 2 things. One, I'll certainly turn it over to Christina and, Clayton, because you were in the audience. I don't know if you still are. I think I want to be really careful about the correlation and causation. Is you are 100% right that we have to do everything we can to retain terrific staff. We have to be really careful that if somebody is leaving after a month, 6 months, a year, we have to really understand why. Is that we are doing a lot of new kind of onboarding and support, but just because somebody worked for us for 6 months and left, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were a great fit and we're sad to lose them. It also doesn't mean that they wanted to be with us. But I think that you're right to highlight that, I will say, what was really interesting to us when we looked at the data before is that there was people leaving in the first 2 years, and then there were people retiring at 25. The fact that people were staying between year 2 and 25 is actually a really good thing when it comes to hiring, because it means once they kind of came over the hump, they like it, they're here. But I just want to be really careful to think that anybody who leaves in the first year is something that we have to be overly concerned about. My hope, and this is something that the board's asked for and I'm really happy with, and Day is really working on as well, is we got to give you the rationale as to why people are leaving. Because, like, for instance, we saw that there was, at one school, there were a lot of people leaving, and they all had the same reason. And if we don't fix that, that's a problem. So I really appreciate you saying that. I don't know, Christina, what onboarding stuff, we're doing. But.
Sure, so we continue to develop the onboarding process. I will absolutely say that it's something that was lacking in prior years. So what we're looking at doing is having a more robust onboarding process where when new hires come in, they are given resources, they are given time to spend in the buildings, and are introduced to staff prior to starting. Something that we used to do as a district is you were hired, you were onboarded, started the next day or two. Kind of didn't give them enough time to acclimate themselves with both maybe who their leader was, what the department was, or the school that they were going into. So we are moving to more of that model and continuing to develop that process and what it looks like for each position, because for every position it's a little bit different. But yes, we are continuing to work on that onboarding. We do have a current onboarding process, but we continue to develop that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the Personnel Committee? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move us on to the consent agenda. Our consent agenda this evening consists of the approval of the June 6th regular meeting minutes, the June 13th public hearing on the budget, and the June 13th information study session minutes, along with the Willow Food Service equipment bid recommendation, the change order request for the Hill Track, and the change order request for Pat and Go build. May I have a motion?
Madam President?
Mr. Lopez.
Yeah, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
It's been moved by Mr. Lopez, supported by Dr. Rodriguez. Dr. Rodriguez, all right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes 6-0. That brings us to our new business this evening for consideration. We have our GLRC resolution, which is the Greater Lansing Regional Committee in the Great Lakes Recovery and Energy. I'm hoping that Mr. Krim has a lot to say about this, because this is Greek to me. But we have a resolution and recommendation in front of us. I'm not sure if there's a member of the administration that would like to tell us more about this.
I thought you were just going to ask Mr. Krim to talk about it. No, just kidding. So this is something that we have to do every year. So this is standard business for the district. So we are this is part of stormwater management. So this is basically, this keeps cutting out, for the district to continue to comply with making, not dumping inappropriate substances into the water, and making sure that we are complying with all stormwater and drain management. So this is us signing on saying, yes, we will continue to do that and be good stewards of the community.
Now that you said that, it does remind me that Mr. Krim helped translate for this for me last time we talked about this. Dr. Rodriguez?
Yes, they say authorizes the payment. How much is the payment? It's not here.
Sorry, I'm looking at my director of operations right now, but she's having a hard time remembering too. It is not a vast amount, but we can absolutely get that for you.
Okay.
Yes.
That is, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And this, it does say extends the agreement to April 4th, 2028. Does that mean the board does not need to review this again until 2028, or is it still required to be reviewed annually?
I'm going to double check on that one too. I think we might still need to review it annually, but we're entering into the agreement for that time frame.
Perfect. Okay. That doesn't change the fact that we need to do it for this year, so.
Right, we have, right, this is something we have to do. I want to,
Correct.
yeah, yep.
No problem.
We just might need to recommit every year to it.
Perfect. All right. May I have a motion? Dr. Rodriguez?
I move that the Board of Education approve the Lansing Regional Committee to a Stormwater Management Memorandum of Agreement as presented.
It's been moved by Dr. Rodriguez, supported by Mr. Krim. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. That brings us to our Greenlink contract. I am going to turn it over to Ms. Tokar to talk to us more about the contracted services
Sure.
document we have in front of us this evening.
Thank you. So this is, I think the board is familiar with, but I will remind you gladly that Greenlink Education Services is the company that we've been partnering with over the past year to help us through several different projects. I want to highlight some of those things. One, Greenlink Education helped us receive $12 million in grants and anticipated savings that will benefit the district for years to come. We have also garnered national recognition, with the Lansing School District being one of only 13 school districts in the United States as a 2024 recipient of the U.S. Department of Energy's Efficient and Healthy Schools program. Additionally, this past year, we received 20 all-electric school buses through the efforts of Greenlink Education and through the EPA's Clean School Bus Grant Program. We've also launched a student internship program, which we're very happy of, and I believe several of you have met Cadence, who helped go out to Denver to help us receive our award. We have also done, they assisted us in getting our master facilities plan going, and we've done several other things with them. So this contract is for those green and sustainability initiatives, including working with EPA on Clean School Bus Grant. Sorry, this keeps cutting out. And then they also assist us through a different contract that is separate from this, so I want to make sure there's a distinction between the two. This is the one to help us with the items that I just stated. Thank you very much. The other thing that Greenlink Services does is work with us on solar, but that is a separate contract that is different from this. So this contract that you see in front of you tonight extends this opportunity through the next school year. Currently, they are working on grants that may that the district may receive anywhere from $12 to $14 million worth of grants this next school year. So that is the current information that I have for you tonight regarding the contract and the different grants that they are working on.
Thank you very much. I just feel like I need to reiterate this because I'm channeling my inner Dr. Rodriguez, that this has nothing to do with placement of solar panels or when that's going to happen, right?
Has
Okay.
nothing to do with
Just-
that. This is very
I
separate.
I
This
see
has
you
nothing
double
to do
checking. I
with
just want to
solar.
make sure that that was clear. And this was contracted service hours. I'm going to turn it over to you guys in just a second. I did have a question, just so I'm clear about how this came to be. So as I'm reading the project overview, it says the Lansing School District is seeking professional advisory services for our sustainability action plan, and this is a proposal for contracted services. Did we have anybody else apply for contracted services for this purpose with us?
So it's not an applicable,
Got
like a
it.
contracted service is not something that you post to have people apply for,
Perfect.
if that makes sense.
I got it. That helps clarify. I was a
Sure.
little confused. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
I have a question.
I have Dr. Rodriguez, Mr.
Yes,
Cram, and I got you, Ms. Williams.
This, how many people, is it an organization or is a person working? How is what is the operations? And the total is 135,000, that is all?
Correct. That is all. So the total amount of people that they have in the organization now, I believe, is up to 8. So this includes the entire team working on this. The team also is comprised of the 2 people that created the team are the former person that I would say is in my role, but for the New York City public school system, so 1,700 schools that oversaw operations, and also the gentleman also that has been here to present for you before that also did operations for the Washington DC public school system, and both of them have worked to have multiple sustainability and green initiatives in those two very large school districts. So they have them, and then they have other members of their team as well as working with student interns in the Lansing School District. So they bring them on as well.
That is why I'm not informed as much as I'm supposed to know that maybe during the year we get a report telling us all this was thanks to that company.
Okay.
And that way we know that we are spending the money, but we are getting something from the money.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to wait 1 year to approve the game.
Sure.
Without knowing.
So the total cost for this contract is roughly 1,000. And I don't know what last year's previous contract was for the amount, but they helped us obtain, what was that in grant number again?
$12 million.
That is just phenomenal. I know I've said it before at past meetings, but just thank them and thank you and all you guys that are doing that. That's huge for the district to be able to spend. I don't want to say it's a little bit of money, but in the grand scheme, to get that $12 million in grant, it's huge.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Williams?
Ms. Tokar, I just, for clarification, because it said in the top half, it says that they support our EV bus charging and all of that, but in the attachment, it says that implementation support for Michigan EV bus grant if awarded. I thought we were already awarded that with 20 buses.
So we were awarded different grants for buses. We also then got another buses, but what comes along with that is charging. So we were awarded the actual buses themselves, but now we need to do all of the work around creating the charging stations, what that looks like. I can go into that a lot, but actually getting those up and implemented, contracting out that work, working with Dean Transportation as our partner to see what that looks like, and we meet with them frequently as a team to make sure that we get all of that up and running, and as well as Board of Water and Light.
Okay, thank you for
You're
the
welcome.
clarification.
Thank you. I think I did this out of order because I opened for questions without a motion, but may I have a motion? Dr. Rodriguez?
Thank you. I move that the Board of Education approve Greenlink education contract for the 2024-25 school year as presented.
Moved by Dr. Rodriguez, supported by Mr. Krim. Any other additional questions or comments from board members?
Yes, President Willis.
Sure, Mr. Nowinski.
I just want to echo that I think this is a very wise investment for the district to make, for these consultants to help us. I just want to lift up, looking for that recognition again. I know that's a project they're working on. We've already received some. I think Lansing has been a leader in this area and want to continue to lift that up as a positive for the district. And also in the area of waste management, I think it's one that I hope we explore with the city and municipalities. It's an area that not many people have looked at, and we have a large amount of, I'm sure, biological waste that could be disposed of in a better way from our cafeterias and other programs. So I hope that, through this consulting process, we'll find some solutions in that area.
Thank you so much, Mr. Krim. No, Mr. Nowinski, I'm sorry. Any additional questions or comments from board members? All right, seeing none, may all those in favor please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes 6-0. Next, we have consideration of our renewal of our membership for MHSAA, which is the Michigan High School Athletic Association. I would like to say that I am happy to not only see that someone figured out how to type on this document this year, but it also includes our list of middle school sports that we are offering. So I'm going to do this in the proper parliamentary order this time and ask for a motion.
Madam President, I move, with the exception of a correction on the date that we fixed that we accept this resolution.
Which date are you looking at?
It says the 18th, but it just has the T, no H in the form, so we need to make that correction
Where are you looking?
in the resolution itself.
Oh, on the resolution, not the application. Gotcha.
Right, at the record of adoption.
Perfect. Okay, so since you made that before, to make sure that is corrected, there's a motion on the floor. May I have a support?
Support.
It's moved by Ms. Williams, supported by Dr. Rodriguez, that the Board of Education approve the MHSAA renewal form for the 2024-2025 school year as corrected. Any questions or comments? Absolutely.
I just want to really point out, not only is this membership into MHSSA, including a lot of our junior high school work and our K-8 work, is our real hope is that with this approval, we're going to be pushing towards a lot of health and wellness all the way down to our younger kids. Typically, over the last couple of years, sadly, the school district has really been focusing on high school sports and high school wellness, but not as much as really robust sports programs and health and wellness programs for the younger kids. This is going to be the kind of beginning of a really new and innovative and rigorous athletics program. So I'm really happy to be able to comment. So thank you, President.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? All right, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. That brings us on to our discussion items section on the agenda. We do not have any discussion items. That brings us to report from Secretary and announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Sure thing.
July 27, 5 p.m., Eastern High School class 1974, 50 reunion, 925 South Kreitz Road. Registration required. All the Quakers should be there. August 19, Teacher's First Day. We finished school yesterday. August 21st, first day of the school. Next board meetings, July 20th is today, July 20th, the Board of Education will be in a retreat at 9 a.m. in the Conference Center and 225 College Avenue, Holland, Michigan. August 1st, regular board meeting, and August 15th, regular board meetings. That's in the Secretary announcement, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Dr. Rodriguez? Okay, seeing none, we are up to public comment on non-agenda items. I'm going to ask for a courtesy from our board members if we could take a 5-minute recess. We have 17 members registered for public comment, which is great. I welcome the feedback, and I want to make sure that we can give you all of our attention. But we have been sitting here for 2 hours, so we could just take 5 minutes to stretch our legs so that the public speakers have our full attention during their public comment. I'd appreciate that. Is there any objection from board members? We take a 5-minute recess? Okay, all right, we will reconvene at 8:08.
And I was going to say.
Wow, just came from summer camp.
Oh, good. How you doing? Did you
Tired.
register already?
No, I have to tomorrow.
You have to.
I've been out of town. I will get there
You
tomorrow.
go for 7 years or 6 years or 3 years, for how many years
The
going?
full term.
Full term? Then how many are going for full term? You have to be careful in that.
Well, there's only 3 of us.
Yeah, but it's only 2 positions.
There are 3 full terms and
Oh,
then
these
1,
3.
2, yeah.
And you want 2. Then it's a fine.
There's 4
Okay.
open seats this year.
Yeah, I know it's 4, but I was thinking 2 and 2. But no, it's 1 for 6. I mean 3 for 6 and 1 for 2.
Right.
Okay, then it's better just go for 6 and see what happens.
I think Dea's running for the partial.
Who?
Dr. Martinez, I think she said she's running for the partial.
Really?
I think so.
I don't believe her.
She just sent me a thing the other day that she filed, so I don't know what she decided.
She filed, but doesn't mean a lot. Yeah. I mean, I see all this presentation and it's a new beginning. But I don't, that is philosophy. I want in writing, and I want to approve by the board. They don't run the district. We want to say yes.
Well, yeah, the budget for all those positions, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know where
but
that
that was I mean.
coming from.
Give me in writing and present to the board for approval. That was I asked for. And after that, whatever, money, qualification of these people, everything should be in front of us. Okay. And I'm leaving soon anyway. I won't be here in August.
Oh, really?
August. Too bad because I cannot come back before. I already got it. I come back on the 18th because I want to go to the first day of the school.
Yeah.
When I come back by 10:30, I will be okay in the morning.
Do we have to vote on the meeting changes that they're not going to have in August and or September and October? I think they changed. They said they're changing the meeting from the 3rd to the 4th.
I didn't see that.
And it was in one of the.
Check the.
It wasn't to
I'm
anything
going to
today.
see. I'm going to see.
It was in like the officer note.
The 15. What is the 15? What is the 15?
I think it's September and October. that
Oh,
changed,
okay.
So we have time.
Yeah. I have time to. We got to approve that.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
they are saying that because they had to announce to the public too.
Right. Yeah, I think they said they had some meetings and. Well, yeah.
The how many? Let me see.
All right, good evening. Let's go ahead and get started. Back. 1, 2, we are all back. Great. Perfect. I am going to, like I said, we have 18 now members of the public registered to speak to us. You have 3 minutes to address the board if you're not familiar with speaking to the board at public comment. There is a mic set up right here to my left, about 3/4 of the way down the aisle. I'm going to call the first speaker, and then I'm going to call who's on deck, so you can just be prepared to know that you are coming up. I'm just calling folks in the order in which they submitted these forms. So our first speaker this evening is Maricela Martinez, who will be followed by Lee Taylor. So I would like to invite Maricela to the makeshift podium this evening to address the board with your comments.
Thank you. Hello. I'm Mari Martinez, and I'm a sub in the district. I'd obviously like to speak regarding the restructuring of the library staff. From what I've heard presented here, there were no lies told by Sarah Atwood in the Lansing State Journal, despite Ben's comment about misinformation. The plan described involves cutting the number of librarians, and you kept saying 5 librarians will be staffed. But that's only 2 librarians for all of those elementary and middle schools. This is a complete undervaluing of librarians. A librarian has a master's degree in library sciences. I heard the words about training programs for the instructional assistants by the 2 librarians being creating a program for them. But will that be sufficient? It doesn't sound sufficient. It sounds like when the kids get a long-term sub that teaches them nothing all semester. Elementary and middle school libraries are just as important as high school libraries, if not more important, because those years are preparing them for high school. More people to work with students is not as effective as a highly trained professional librarian. My question is, are the 2 other librarians being cut so that you don't have to pay them a salary and benefits, and you can pay the instructional assistants for less without benefits? A decision like this is going to have long-term consequences and will create a gap in our educational system that will be felt for years to come. Librarians are at the forefront of the battle against censorship and book bans, which have already started to be enforced in our country. Libraries preserve history and truth, and librarians are not just people who help kids check out books. Librarians are teachers who teach essential research and information, literary skills that are increasingly important in our digital age. These skills help students navigate the overwhelming amount of information that they encounter daily so that they can be informed, discerning citizens, critical thinkers, and I urge you to reconsider this plan to cut librarians and to recognize the invaluable role of librarians that they serve in the district and in our community. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. I would like to invite Lee Taylor, followed by Cheryl Brand.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Lee Taylor. L is for lovely and lively. T is for tall, tan, and terrific. These are the things that the librarians and the educators teach our youth. I understood everything that was said here today, and I really respect what that young lady just said, and the things that people over-understand, under-understand, and do not state appropriately and misinform everybody else with their rhetorics. They do teach, and it is true, that the librarians have an important area in the school district, as do also the educators. Educators have the opportunity to inspire and engage youth and tell them how to go to the library to get the things that they need to get and to look into it. I had the opportunity to earn or get new books from a school or a place that were the libraries from all of the schools in the Lansing School District donated to an organization that was not part of the school district. The thing that I noted in all of those books that I received was 100% of them was only taken out of the library once or twice in 10 years. That means that either the educator did not have the opportunity to inspire the youth to go to the library to get the material, or the educators were restricted in their curriculum on how or when or where they send the children to the library. If you have an educator that is creative, they can inspire the students to do better, and they inspire the students to read. I introduced to Michigan State University Cooperative Extension in the 80s a way to do reading readiness for kids beginning in early development all the way up to high school. Some of those ideas are still used in 82 counties. I also introduced in the Lansing School District methods and operations to improve how youth do essays, research to books and culture, and academics in order to know how to be into the technology world so they can be in journalism, reading, and writing. Reading is really fundamental, and they can't always get it in the classroom except with a creative educator. The creative educator then works with the librarian, and they all teach the children how to research the materials in the books. I don't know when a book loses its value and when they just give it away because they no longer want to keep it in the library. I'm grateful that they did that because I acquired over 100 books like that. But if the books are acquired by me and never read by the student, what good is it to have all those pictures of the books in the library, all the books showing up on the desk, and nobody is teaching the children how to research or read the books? Creative educators, smart, educated librarians work together. Our public system is dependent on the two.
I would like to invite up Ms. Brand, followed by Jakia Murphy.
Architects are designers and builders, not educators. The Lansing School Board were elected and charged with providing what our students need to be successful and be vigilant caretakers for tax dollars, not educators. The board hires a superintendent who is an educator and can advise them as to what the best systems, protocols, procedures, everything that helps our kids succeed. So when cubby libraries, common space bookshelves, no or two librarians is suggested, it's the superintendent's responsibility to passionately veto that immediately, because he is the one who knows, or at least should know, that part-time librarians drastically increase students' reading and writing capabilities, not to mention the benefit of full-time librarians, especially for K through 8, and the emotional growth paths they offer are immeasurable. So does our superintendent not understand the value of librarians? Or, going by Ben's State Journal's quote today that this was an internal personnel issue, perhaps he feels they're too expensive. When I contacted the board last month, I included 3 pieces of literature with 57 links to students, briefs, evidence of the obvious benefit of librarian, and not just pretty rooms. From that, I got that data from one link from Cattle, and I am continuing every day to get more data. To me, this appears to be a heinous dereliction of duty, and there should be consequences for that. How much evidence is required to fix this before it's broken irreparably? All our librarians need to be restored to full-time, and that includes the 6th through 8th grade that received no library services last year, along with several schools without librarians. The architect should reconfigure for libraries, and while that's costly, it needs to happen. The state of Michigan is poised to enact a law requiring the schools and libraries to have libraries and librarians, where a law should not be required to do what's right for our kids. Full-time librarians should be the future in our pretty rooms. The schools have been told there's no libraries next year, and the librarians are all displaced or reassigned. So to say you're not closing libraries, they're just rooms with books. It seems this administration will wreak his path of destruction and move on to another job, while you, the board, will remain as those bearing the stink of destroying Lansing Schools' libraries. Everyone I have spoken to, teachers, parents, citizens who have reached out to the board or administration with questions have been ignored, stonewalled, misled, deceived, distracted, and tonight's no different with all this gaslighting. It's real clear that this administration and board know this is not what the community wants or will accept, so it's all hands on deck to silence any pushback. The utter disregard, disrespect, and contempt for our staff, families, and kids in this matter I find diabolical. There never was or will be a scenario where anything good was going to happen with our libraries, denigrated, devalued, and unprotected. I'm asking the board to do the right thing for our kids and restore and protect our libraries and librarians now.
I have Jakia Murphy followed by Heidi Fry. And Ms. Fry, thank you for putting the phonetic spelling on your card.
I invite you guys to take a look around today. This might look familiar. Last fall, the Lansing community and LSD staff invited the school board to a community discussion about equity and what felt like discriminatory practices. We spoke, some people cried, some sent letters, children poured out their hearts. Most of you were in attendance. It could have been the start of a deeply restorative process. Instead, we were only given responses through media outlets where the board president explained all concerns were simply a lie. I'm almost offended by the tone from tonight, but I won't waste our time to explain why. I'd like to instead leave you all with the following to use during your personal reflection time later. How might you receive remarks questioning the validity of data and information presented during countless press conferences the district has participated in over the past year? It appears from tonight, parents from Luton were successful in gaining your consideration for the change to a centralized library. How many Willow families provided feedback on school plans and/or the libraries? Were Riddle families a part of that discussion? If parents didn't attend, how should they have provided feedback to you? How have Mount Hope parents provided feedback? It was stated that the library space in Willow's Pods was comparable to the model shown on the board. What is the exact square footage of these library spaces on the building plans? How might you work to improve communication between district and community? It is your job to address these concerns. Are you doing this well? Newsflash, pun intended, the information on social media is coming directly to you from us, a collective us. I'm glad you're willing to speak to us now about our concerns. As I've stated before, and what others have also shared, I'm happy to participate in dialogue about what I can only guess was a recommendation presented here tonight by your team. I'm sure the community would love to give their recommendations as well. To read is to be free. Literacy is liberation.
Ms. Fry, and then Ms. Fry will be followed by Sheila Contreras.
Hello, thank you for your time tonight. I'm a Lansing resident, and I voted to fund new facilities. Like many parents and many Lansing residents, I took it for granted that building a new school included building a library, the central nexus of learning and education in a building. What I've come to realize is that the board and this administration is viewing that definition of a library very loosely. When we were presented with plans, none of those plans included the word library. It wasn't until my daughter, going into 6th grade, raised her hand at that meeting and said, "Where's the library?" We then learned that the library, quote, space would be better defined as a book nook, a small area in a pod. okay? Unlike the large images that we were shown tonight, the square footage depicted in these plans were nothing like what was presented. They were areas where the library would be dismantled and given to these small pod spaces. All of this information did not come from social media, disinformation, or rumors. This came directly from the plans that were presented to Lansing parents at Luton. Additionally, when students circulated a petition, they gained 120 signatures in a matter of 2 days supporting the library space and retaining the key resource, the librarian, to help the students and to help the teachers at Luton, but also at other schools in the district. Like the superintendent and like everyone else, I was shocked to learn this. I was shocked to learn that there was a disinvestment in libraries in our schools. I was also shocked when I attended, with 24 hours notice, I attended a parent meeting at Luton to find that the summary slide summarizing all the parent concerns did not include our concerns for the library and retaining not only that central key library space, but also the library facility, the library staff. It included other concerns, but those that were expressed by parents and also by students were not documented in that process, and those concerns were not honored as much as all of the other things that were mentioned that evening. I do want to stress that we understand you appreciate books and you know that books are important, but the access to those books and the place where they're housed and the staff that are trained, have master's degrees, and are there able to help guide our students through the training process to introduce them to libraries and introduce them to books are important too. We encourage you to also add those library spaces to Riddle, Willow, and retain them at Mount Hope as well. Thank you.
I have Sheila Contreras, who will be followed by Jamie Lee Rollins.
We did not agree for you to raise our taxes to build schools with no libraries, and I will not quibble over the definition of a library. I think we all know what it actually is. You've taken our goodwill, our hopes and dreams for the future of this city's children. You've taken our money. And if we are in this spot now, we are here because of the lack of transparency and the outright, well, as somebody said before, gaslighting, telling people who have observed with their own eyes something that it is not true. To continue on this path with this library plan, even the new one, which is exploitive, it is exploiting the labor of teachers, and it is exploiting the labor of those potential 34 specialists. They cannot be trained to do the job of a librarian. It's exploitive. You're adding more labor to people who are already just working in under-resourced situations. So this is not a one-school issue. It's not each school and then the families decide. That is not how it should be. The virtual lack of any kind of research base for these decisions is astounding, and the undervaluing of librarians and their specialized skill and training is, I can't even think of a word. It's just, it's offensive. We were led into the process. We trusted and we agreed voluntarily to this tax increase, thinking our children in this city would have buildings that would enable them to reach their full potential. Now we're hearing things about motherships, and which is gendered outdated language, by the way, about motherships and prefab, manufactured housing buildings. They aren't even brick and mortar. I mean, do people know this? Like, do we know this? So if we are not quite with your program, it is because you have not shared information with us in the way that we needed it to be shared. I think, God, there's just so much to say. There's just so much. To make it sound like teachers have the opportunity to develop relationships with students, well, that's just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous, as if teachers don't already do that. So back to the point about the millage. What feels like has happened is a bait and switch, and you're doing it here too. You're doing it all over again, throwing out all kinds of information that people have to absorb very quickly. You took our hopes and dreams for this public school district, and you turned us into the agents of its demise. That is horrifying. I'm so disappointed.
Okay, it is the policy of the district not to respond to public comment, and I want to make it clear that the comment I'm about to say right now is not in response to any public comment that has been said thus far. However, I think that it is critically important that the public understand that all of our buildings have libraries. They have a physical space that is a library, our current buildings and our new buildings. If there is a question about the utilization and the access, that's different. But to purport that there is not a traditional library in our schools is not accurate. And so I just need to make that abundantly clear. I'm happy to hear about all the other information and concerns, but it needs to be a headline statement that there is not going to be the absence of libraries in any of our buildings, period. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. I'm sorry, we're not going to engage in this is a meeting, but we literally showed during our presentation the schematic of Luton that included a library. I'm sorry, this is not the time for this, but what I will say is if there was time during a prior iteration of a map that didn't include one, the only thing that is a matter of fact is what is approved by this board. And so there has not been a schematic approved for Luton, period. Period. There has been no schematic approved for Luton. So to say that Luton doesn't include a library is not accurate because nothing about Luton exists today, period. So to say that it doesn't have a library is not accurate. There are 2 buildings under development right now, that is Mount Hope and Willow, and both of those buildings include a library. So I just want to make that abundantly clear. We hear you, but to say that the building foundations, the 4 squares of those buildings did not include plans to include a library is just not factually accurate. For the buildings on the operations, Luton has not been approved by this board, okay? I would like to invite Jamie Rollins to the table, to the podium, and then next up is Ash Allison.
Okay, well, my name is Jamie Rollins. I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Geyer Park, and I have seen what our librarian, now our librarian currently is not a certified librarian, she is a certified teacher. She's working on getting her certification in library. Now, when I hear these different things, and the first thing I thought of was, when I have a conference with parents, and teachers start talking, we start talking our lingo. And some of the words we heard were books, literacy, and libraries. Those are all different things. They all go together, but they're all different things. We're talking about a library with a librarian who is going to work with teachers. We work together on our curriculum. They reinforce our curriculum. They make special bonds with the kids. I appreciate whenever we have aides, parapros, whatever you want to call them, we need them. However, it is not their job, even with all the training you might give them, to be a librarian. We need certified people to be a librarian. We know this. So I want us all to understand that this is very important, that schools are staffed with certified teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we have Ash Allison followed by Adeline Morrissey Shoemaker.
Hello, everybody. I just want to take a moment to thank the community for showing up tonight as advocates for our children and our librarians. Your voice is absolutely essential in parent involvement especially, and advocacy has proven time and time again an integral part in facilitating actual meaningful change that is good for our children. So thank you for sitting through this going on 3-hour meeting now. You guys are amazing, wonderful for being here. My name is Ash. I'm an educator in the district, and as an educator, I am a steward of learning, as is every educator in the district. We play an integral part in educating our youth, but it's really our librarians that help to construct these imaginative spaces that help us facilitate a love of knowledge for our kids. The questions surrounding the future of our libraries and the librarians are numerous and pretty fraught at this point. The lack of transparency from the board in this process and the hesitation to collaborate with all stakeholders has left the community really frustrated and very distrustful that the board is making decisions that actually reflect our community's needs. We are focused on building literacy skills that students need to succeed in a digital age. Sure, of course, we're teachers. We want to analyze text, have our students become critical writers and thinkers, and that is essential for supporting student growth. But what we also need to consider is the importance of creating a shared culture around knowledge that is stewarded in these common spaces. Libraries have an essential meaning in collaborative spaces across time and empires and have been the seat of society's collective power. School libraries are a microcosm and reflective of society's values and our priorities. Children and human beings in general are innately curious, and we seek knowledge and find ourselves. We identify with characters, we find empowerments in our own interpretation that give us courage, we learn lessons, and we share what we know with the world in order to bring us together. And our K-8 libraries are essential in this process. They are exposed to stories and a common experience, not just a multiplicity of diverse literature that students can't easily access. Students cannot and will not read if they haven't cultivated a love of reading, which happens in the library. Librarians teach students how to follow their interests and intuition. They find themselves in characters and share experience with them. And librarians are not only people interested in cultivating a love of knowledge, but they actively choose to work in our schools and who help guide students, show compassion, and they have the expertise that is needed. The board discussed tonight that libraries are, as they currently stand, are not helping raise literacy or test scores, but is the loss or restriction of our libraries really the solution to this problem? Or is it symptomatic of a much larger systemic issue that fundamentally opposes our mission statement that we're dedicated to? I think that we should remember that we are here to help cultivate a love of learning, and that is what happens in our libraries, and we need to be investing more, not cutting back.
Thank you. Next, I have 3 speakers. So I have Adeline Morrissey Shoemaker, I believe it's Ella Shoemaker, and Jennifer Shoemaker. If you guys are a family, you're welcome to join the podium together, but you each would have 3 minutes to speak. Have they left? Okay. I will keep them. If they make it back before the end of public comment, we certainly will recognize them. That brings me next to Kyle Richard, who will be followed by, we have 2 students from Post Oak. I don't want to mispronounce their names, but I believe it's Sagwa and Lardy. If they're here, they'll be after Mr. Richard.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kyle Richard. I'm a candidate for Lansing Board of Education. I'm here today because really the level of uncertainty going into this, I had heard rumors that we might be losing some librarians. I had seen some stuff online that we might not have libraries in Mount Hope and Willow. And as of right now, Mount Hope and Willow are patches of dirt, right? If they're going to be schools, when we want them to be schools, they're going to want to lay cinder blocks sooner rather than later. And when I look at these blueprints, a media center is frankly not a library. And it's on the blueprints like a classroom and a half. And for Willow, it is the deconstruction of the library. The classroom libraries, I was a teacher for a few years at Sexton, and there was a time where there's an initiative for us to start doing classroom libraries. And the question for me that comes up is who's doing the labor, right? Who is going to be keeping track of these books? Is it the teacher's responsibility as the classroom teacher to keep track of who's borrowing books when, and better not lose a book while also keeping track of your lesson plans and your grading and your mental health and your home life? I don't know. I think one comment that was made by the superintendent, there was a comment that I'm not from here, but there's this overt negativity. And I think that, we move at the speed of trust. And in my experience, in the time that I've lived in Lansing, and the time that I've paid attention to the board, is I get the sense that the community doesn't trust this board. We couldn't trust this board with the Sexton mascot change, right? We were this close to the Sexton Scorpions. And so if we can't trust this board with this mascot change, how can we trust this board with our libraries, with our librarians? Librarians are just as valuable, if not more valuable, than a classroom teacher. And so when we talk about, oh, well, it's 4 to 2, we're going from 4 to 2, it's 4 to 2, that's half, right? We wake up with the sun before the day is done, there's work to do. And so if you're gonna, just because we go from 4 to 2 doesn't mean we have less work to do. Those 2 librarians are still gonna have to do the same amount of work as those 4 librarians, unless we're gonna have these 34 instructional assistants. And I personally agree with what was said earlier about the exploitative nature of this. I see this as just, oh, well, we don't really know when the library is going to be open. 30 minutes, hour before, hour after, who's going to staff the library, right? Are these instructional assistants 34 babysitters that we can underpay without benefits? Like, it's concerning. And I don't want folks to take it personally and think that, the community is out thinking that y'all have nefarious intentions. We're concerned about impact. When those cinder blocks go down, is there going to be a library at Willow? When those cinder blocks go down, is there going to be a library at Mount Hope? That's what folks are concerned about tonight. Thank you.
Okay, were the student speakers from Post Oak still here? Okay, if you guys don't mind saying your name and get started. And you can take the mic off.
My name is Leon. I'm 8 years old. I go to Post Oak Academy for school, and I love reading. The librarian helps me find new books and tells me the sections of where things are. My librarian last year was very helpful.
I'm Sagan. I'm going to be 10 next month. I go to Post Oak like my brother. I like to read too, a lot. My librarian helps me find new books most of the time because whenever I need help finding a book, I just ask her. Her name is Mrs. L. She's really helpful. Every time that I've asked for a book in the library, she's helped me find it or told me they don't have it.
Okay, are you done?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, next up I have Katoria Boyer, followed by Nicole Holliday.
Hey y'all, my son is a student at Mount Hope and had no active library time this past school year. According to the Center for Educational Performance and Information, only 8% of Michigan schools had a full-time librarian in 2019. As of March 2024, some school districts in Michigan don't have libraries at all, and more than 90% of public schools lack a certified librarian. We were a part of that 8%. I believe that tonight's presented plan would put us at the forefront / ahead of what is happening in the Senate. Per Senate Bill 741 to 743, completed April 15, 2024. This bill would amend that each public school would have one library already by the 2025-2026 school year. Further, a school with 1,500 or more pupils would have at least 2 full-time certified school librarians. Further, the Michigan State Board of Education recognized that certified library media specialists serve a critical role in increasing student achievement by supporting, collaborating, and co-teaching with classroom teachers in reading development. Also this year in April of 2024, our great governor, Big Gretch, went ahead and labeled April as Library Month, whereas school library programs staffed by certified school librarians are integral in improving student achievement. Whereas certified school librarians are leaders in technology integration and digital literacy in their schools. Whereas certified school librarians teach students the skills they need to access, evaluate, and use information throughout their lives. I, for one, was very impressed with the plan that was put forth, and I would actually lastly want to spend my time, respectfully, love you all, I would challenge Madam President about the board policy not to respond to public comment, specifically when a question can only be answered by current board members, unless you can point me to a bylaw or adopted policy that I missed. Per your bylaws adopted November 15, 2018, public expression of board members. From time to time, individual board members will make public statements on school matters. When these opinions are expressed in statements that are theirs personally, they simply need to make it clear that their views do not necessarily reflect the views of the board or of their colleagues on the board. Further, per your bylaws adopted October 8, 2015, board member ethics, board members will strive to improve public education, and to that end will remember always that their first and greatest concern must be for the educational welfare of the students attending of the public schools, and encourage the free expression of opinion by all board members.
Thank you. Next, we have Nicole Holliday, followed by Lauren Cooper. Do we have Nicole Holliday present with us? Great. I'm going to put this here in case Nicole makes it back. Lauren Cooper, followed, and our final speaker this evening will be Soraya Jones.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank all the families and all of these tough kids that are hanging out, and just want you guys all to know that we are here for you guys. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak today on this important topic. There's a lot to say here, so I'm going to try not to repeat things that we heard previously. But I do want to start off by being very clear, and I wasn't going to use the word lie up here, but I have been to 2 meetings about this with Luton School, and neither had a library, including the one that we had less than just about 24 hours notice to attend this week. There is no library in the maps, and I have the screenshots to prove it if any media wants to follow up with me afterwards. Overall, the issue with the library needs to be consistent across all schools, and I want to bring up some unique points. Luton is a Spanish immersion school. We don't have kids speaking or reading at the same levels. We have some kids that don't speak English very well. We have some kids that don't speak Spanish very well. It is a fundamental inclusion issue to have these pods that will undermine a student's ability to get access to books that are appropriate to their reading level. It will be very uncomfortable for a child who's in 6th grade to need to go to the pod between 3rd and 4th grade to find a book that they can read, okay? This is like fundamental inclusion principles. And there's a lot of reasons why people read at different reading levels, not just language. There's learning abilities, home situations, all sorts of reasons why. Fundamentally, without a central library, kids will simply have access to fewer books, period. They will have access to fewer books. There's no way around it. A library is a large storage of space that they can come together, have access to books. They don't even have to be the newest books. It's fun looking at older books. It's a space, and it's a place-making space that a music room will not serve this purpose. There's after-school clubs that meet in the library. There's tutoring that happens in the library. A library is a cultural center point of a school that no other room fills this purpose. And beyond that, I did want to point out that there's also an issue with an emphasis on tablets in our schools. And this is almost like some weird dystopian future that is actually becoming real that we're living in now, that now we're not going to have a library too, and my kids are on tablets all the time, even though we limit screen time at home. And I did not sign the tech form, but somehow my kids use tablets all year long, and they have access to the internet, and they're watching YouTube, and they aren't allowed to do that at home. And I have talked to the super about it, and I've talked to my principal about it, and nothing has changed. And now we're not even going to have a library, and it's hard to not feel frustrated. I'm a Lansing resident. I want to support the schools, And I don't feel supported as a parent. I worry about what my kids have access to on this tech-driven solution, even though our kids can all do things on our own iPhones better than we can, so I'm not really impressed by a lot of tablets. We want a library. We're saying it clearly. I honestly don't know what is the issue, and it must be a budget thing or something that's not actually being made clear to us, because we're just saying we want libraries.
Okay, our final speaker this evening is Soraya Jones.
Hello, my name is Shariah Jones. I also go to Post-Oak Academy. As a Lansing School District student, I was surprised that we were getting rid of libraries and how we were getting rid of libraries. Literature is the base of learning, and how can students learn to read without a library? Like, for example, if there's a blind kid that goes to a school and there were no Braille books and there was no library, how they learn to read? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I do want to circle back before I move on in the agenda to see if any of our registered commenters are here, so I don't miss them. Nicole Holliday, are you present? And any members of the Shoemaker family? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to move on in our agenda to the time that we do have set aside for board members to make comment. So we have comments from board members next on the agenda. Would any board members like to make comment this evening? I will start on this side then. No, Mr. Nowinski.
Yes, thank you. I'm grateful for the public bringing all of these perspectives and points to us. I know I was troubled to hear that our current staffing plans create these dark periods when libraries aren't available. So I'm hoping that the plan we're presented with, once it's dialogued, with staff further and the community, will be able to solve that, however that's worked out. So I look forward to seeing that plan as was requested, and thank the community for being involved and encourage you to continue to attend those planning meetings for the new builds.
Thank you, Mr. Cram. Why did I do that to you twice today, Mr. Nowinski? I'm sorry. It's because I'm going to call next on Mr. Cram and then Mr. Lopez.
Go ahead. No, don't. Start from this.
Sorry. I do want to go with Mr. Nowinski and say thank you guys all for coming out. It is truly amazing to hear the voice. It's showing, honestly, to all of us how much you guys care and how much this means to you. And this is not a adopted plan, so to continue to voice your concerns until we are able to refine it and be able to get a plan that is something that we all can agree on and look forward to. I know personally myself, I do have some concerns as well, along with the line of questioning that I had. So I just want to appreciate all of you and continue to voice your concerns, email, how you guys have been doing it. I do see those emails and I appreciate that. So honestly, keep them coming.
Thank you, Mr. Cram. Mr. Lopez?
Thank you, Madam President. Likewise, thank you to everyone who's here. Obviously, the plan has been set is a plan. It's not been approved. So we're going to be talking about this for a while. Maybe not that long, but for some time. Need to iron things out. It's not an easy thing. There's too many moving parts. And I think that those parts need to come together at some point in time. And hopefully it's sooner than later. But thank you for coming. Appreciate that. The other question I have, Mr. Superintendent, school-based budgeting, right? Does that include the school improvement team? Were they part of the school-based budgeting?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple of steps that happen. One is there's legal requirements in terms of what budget they have to spend and how they can spend. But a lot of the work and what's nice about the school-based budgeting is that SIT teams and others are they're a part of it, and they end up having to approve quite a lot of it. Sometimes there's things that happen through the union contract that are just unequivocal, but a lot of times it is through SIT team. I mean, I don't know if anybody else wants to speak, because you guys are in those meetings with the principals, but I don't know.
So-
Yeah.
When we set up the budget meetings, we encourage them to develop their budget plan with their school improvement team and community members, and then they come in and they sit with us and they tell us what they want. We work with them to make sure it fits within their allocation and that it follows contracts. Other than that, we don't dictate one way or another.
Yeah, just to make sure that input was there and that it's taken into consideration by the principals. Obviously, the principals may want something that the team might say, well, let's think about it, and that's a good idea. So thank you. Appreciate your response.
Thank you. Dr. Rodriguez?
Thank you very much to everybody. We are here because you, and you are there, and we are here because of students. And that is going to be our task. It's a new beginning, I said that before, that from here we can do better for our students. I think that this board is doing the best we can. Not always are perfect, but we try to represent the community the best we can, and we will do the best for you. But thank you for your ideas, your courage, and keep doing that, because it's the community that brings things together and educates the child. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Williams?
First, let me say thank you for all of you being here. It is wonderful to see you actively using your voice for who you are and what you want. I am excited that this dialogue is happening, and I look forward to more of it. I thought about, as we begin to go through this, what my platform was, but it reminded me as a child how I spent all of my time in the library, because that was my safe haven. And I came across something that said, let's remember, one book, one pen, one child, and one teacher all together can change the world. And that's what we are as educators, as parents, changing the world for the next generation. So let's look at how we can work together to make that change and make it greater. Again, thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you. Any additional comments on board members? I think everybody's gone. I do know that Superintendent would like to make one more comment before I have a motion to adjourn.
I just want to say thank you also, but I also want to make sure that I understand the comments, because, again, the entire premise of doing this today was for you to hear what the staff was advocating for us, and then trying to hear feedback. I do want to just make sure that Mr. Richard understands my meaning behind my comment. I'm still really shook by what happened over the Memorial Day weekend, and what I was referring to in terms of the negativity was how our children were blamed for actions that they didn't do. As a superintendent, we rarely talk about it, but when a student dies, there's a level of guilt that is pretty palpable, and the only thing I meant by the comment of the negativity was how quick some folks, and certainly I don't think anybody in this room, was to blame our children for being victims. And that's just something that really has gotten to me over the course of my time here. So at no point did I mean the stuff about this, but what I'm really appreciative of what Mr. Richard said is it's absolutely clear that there isn't necessarily a sense of trust with some folks in the community. And I think what we need to try to understand is by doing these kinds of activities, it's the opposite of what it seems like it was interpreted as. It's to show how decisions are made so that we can get feedback. So what I'm hearing is a couple of things. One, there seems to be an overwhelming response from folks around Luton that they want one singular library. Great. I mean, terrific. Like, I am sure that we need to have some more meetings about what that means, and I think we could probably do it. The second thing is, and I don't quite understand this, but there's a sense that having 34 assistants is some sort of kind of like labor issue. I just want to make sure people understand that these would be unionized full workers who would have pensions and health care and things like that. If the community thinks that instead of having 34 assistants throughout our schools, we need to bring back 2 librarians, it's fine. It's actually, that's a lot less money. So this argument that this is about fiscal responsibility, it's really about trying to put kids first. And again, the decision is not been made, but what I've heard over and over again from the staff is many of our libraries are empty in terms of they don't have people in them during large pieces of the day or the year. Trying to figure out a way to do that is something that we should try to do. But if the current model is the one that the community wants, we're absolutely going to listen to it. I just think that we probably need to start thinking creatively about moving forward. But what I would request from the community is, we heard you loud and clear. There was a lot of concern about devaluing librarians. That was certainly not our intent, and certainly the idea of getting rid of libraries, which, as the president said, that's never been on the docket. If people need to know square footage of rooms, we're happy to give them. That's really not a big deal. And I also want to make sure, somebody had said that I called Sarah Atwood out personally. That's absolutely not true. I think Sarah's a very good reporter. All I was saying was, in the ways that the district is perceived in the press at times has been negative, and I think honestly that's really true. A lot of times the benefit of the doubt doesn't go to the district, even when things like our graduation rate is up 23%, or our attendance rate is up 14%, or we're increasing enrollment, or we're creating Lansing Tech, or we're doing universal pre-K. So I would say, to be honest, we want to gain your trust. What else is it going to take? Because the only way that this is going to work is for us to be able to work together. So, I appreciate the time. We'll try to put together a plan in terms of the ideas. But you know what? What we're taking loud and clear is those that spoke around Luton. You want an individual library. No problem for us. It's actually cheaper, to be honest, and that the Willow families, that's what we were told. But if the concern is not many Willow families spoke, and when I say Willow, I mean Riddle Willow. It's one school, but it is a combination of 2. So again, thank you so much for the comments, and we'll take them to heart.
Thank you. Any additional comments from board members? I just want to, again, thank all of our speakers this evening and reiterate the point of my comment was that nothing is official until the board takes action. So that was the point of my comment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
President,
Dr. Rodriguez?
I move that the Board of Education adjourn.
It's been moved by Dr. Rodriguez, supported by Ms. Williams. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. At 9:06, the board, motion passes 6-0. At 9:06, the board is adjourned.